My mom, who had abandoned me for years, suddenly contacted me and said she wanted to transfer some pocket money to me as compensation. Half believing and half doubting, I opened my phone and checked the amount. 10, 2 zeros, 3 zeros. I kept counting until I saw 9 zeros. I had received a full billion yuan, and the shocking number left me completely stunned. But before I could even process it, Xu Lingling from the red table suddenly rushed over and loudly accused me of stealing the class funds. Anger instantly surged through me, and I shot back, "Just because I'm poor, you accuse me of stealing money? Just because I'm poor, you can frame me? Just because I'm poor, you can humiliate me whenever you want? I, Zhao Yang, may be poor, but I have integrity. I'd rather starve to death or freeze to death than do something so petty." My outburst stunned everyone. In their eyes, I had always been a quiet and honest person, and this was the first time they had ever seen me so agitated. The classroom instantly fell silent, and many people exchanged uncertain glances, not knowing what to say. After a moment, some classmates began speaking up. One of them said, "Yeah, but Zhao Yang has never done anything wrong before. He wouldn't steal money, would he?" Another said, "Xu Lingling, check again. Where did you put it? If you forgot, look again." Hearing people start to support me, Xu Lingling looked shocked. She immediately protested, "There's no way I forgot. Anyway, the money is gone, so what else could it be?" Just then, Xu Lingling's boyfriend, Zhang Yang, walked into the classroom. He claimed that I had taken the missing class funds, and Xu Lingling immediately acted as if she had found someone to back her up. Zhang Yang looked toward me, seemed to remember something, then glanced at me from the side and let out a cold laugh. "I thought I was seeing things earlier. Zhao Yang, it really was you." The other classmates didn't understand what he meant and immediately asked what he had seen. Zhang Yang said, "At noon, I saw our school's famously poor Zhao Yang go into that newly opened upscale restaurant on campus. The prices there aren't cheap. At lunch, he had happened to pass by the restaurant and saw me there. He had been wondering how I could possibly afford to eat at a place like that. Maybe he thought he was mistaken at first, but now he felt everything made sense." Looking at me confidently, he said, "I told you so. Let's see how you deny it now. You said the money wasn't yours? Then where did you get the money to eat at that fancy restaurant?" As soon as he said that, many classmates immediately became convinced that I had taken the class funds and was refusing to admit it. One person said, "Seriously, Zhao Yang, you shouldn't do something like this." Another added, "If you really needed money, you could have told us classmates. You can't do this." Someone else urged, "Zhao Yang, hurry up and return it before things get worse." I looked at them and said firmly, "I did go to a restaurant for lunch, but I paid for it myself. It has nothing to do with the class funds." Xu Lingling immediately challenged me. "Then where did you get the money to eat there? You must have used the class funds. You stole it." I frowned and replied, "What does it have to do with you where I got the money?" Xu Lingling, "You're meddling too much." After saying that, I sat back down in my seat. Soon, the first class of the afternoon began, and teacher Li Anqi entered the classroom. Before she could even start the lesson, Xu Lingling suddenly stood up and said, "Teacher, I have something to say." Li Anqi looked at her and asked, "What is it?" Xu Lingling immediately answered, "The class funds are missing. Zhao Yang took them." Li Anqi looked surprised. "What? Zhao Yang stole them?" Xu Lingling quickly repeated everything Zhang Yang had claimed to have seen. Then she implied, "He's poor. How could he possibly afford to spend money at a place like that?" I looked at them and said, "I know what you're thinking. You think there's no way I could afford to eat there." Li Anqi knew very well that the restaurant Zhang Yang mentioned was one of the more expensive places around the school. She couldn't help wondering how I could afford it. Had I spent all my remaining living expenses? Still, she also knew my character. I immediately said, "I spent my own money. I didn't steal any class funds. What evidence do you have that proves I took it?" Li Anqi knew I didn't have much money, but she also knew my nature. No matter what happened, I wasn't someone who would do such a thing. However, Xu Lingling refused to let it go. With a sarcastic expression, she said, "Still won't admit it, huh? Then do you dare let me search you?" I immediately shot back, "What right do you have to search me?" Xu Lingling sneered and said, "Why are you acting so guilty, Zhao Yang? If you didn't take it, then don't be afraid. Let me search you. That'll prove your innocence and earn teacher Li Anqi's approval." Without waiting, Xu Lingling began searching my pockets. She searched for a long time, but couldn't find a single cent on me. Seeing that, Li Anqi quietly breathed a sigh of relief. Then Xu Lingling suddenly said, "Of course he doesn't have it on him. He must have hidden it." After saying that, she grabbed my backpack and dumped everything inside onto the floor. As the contents spilled out, a thick stack of red banknotes appeared among them. Xu Lingling immediately grabbed the money and held it high above her head, as if she was afraid someone might not notice it. I froze for a moment. Then I suddenly remembered that last night after dinner, I had gone to the bank and withdrawn some money for myself. I didn't even have a wallet, so I had simply stuffed the cash inside one of my books. How could I have forgotten about it? Looking at the money in Xu Lingling's hand, I immediately said, "This is my money." Xu Lingling looked at me with complete disdain and sneered, "Your money? Where did you get this money? Everyone knows what kind of person you are. Now that you've been caught red-handed, what else do you have to say?" Standing nearby, Li Anqi was also stunned. She usually knew exactly how much money I had because she was the one who gave me my living expenses. Over the past 2 days, I had spent a lot on taxis and restaurants, so there was no way I should still have that much cash left. She never expected to see so much money in my bag, and her expression immediately turned cold. Looking at me, she said, "What else is there to explain?" I clenched my teeth and replied, "Don't you know who I am? Li Anxi was my homeroom teacher, but she was also my legal wife. Years ago, my parents had helped the Li family. To repay that favor, the Li family arranged a marriage between their daughter and the Zhao family. As soon as I came of age, Li Anqi had been forced to register a marriage with me. Ever since my parents disappeared, I had been living with her. However, Li Anqi had always disliked our relationship. Before she could say anything else, some classmates immediately reacted. "Zhao Yang, how dare you call Teacher Li by her name? Are you crazy?" Another person said, "Who do you think you are? How could Teacher Li possibly know what kind of person you really are? You can know a face but not a heart." Someone else added, "Are you still trying to argue? How does the teacher know who you really are?" Shu Lingling shook her head and said coldly, "I'm really disappointed in you." I immediately replied, "I didn't steal the money." Li Anqi suddenly slammed her hand against the podium and shouted, "Even now you still refuse to admit your mistake? Get out! I don't have a student like you." With no way to defend myself, I could only stand alone outside the classroom until the lesson ended. As soon as class was over, Shu Lingling walked to the classroom door with a look of contempt on her face. She mocked me and said, "Some people are really ungrateful. They're given a chance, but they still refuse to admit what they did." Other students nearby whispered among themselves, "This is bad. Things have gotten really serious. Let's see what he does now." I looked at Shu Lingling and said firmly, "I didn't steal the money." She rolled her eyes and laughed. "Everyone knows who stole it." I stared at her and said, "You can laugh at me, but you can't insult my character." Shu Lingling burst out laughing. "You think you have character? Ha 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 ha, that's hilarious." After saying that, she turned around and walked away proudly. I clenched my fists so tightly that my whole body trembled with anger. If she hadn't been a woman, I would have already slapped her. Just then, Li Anqi's voice came from behind me. "Come to my office." After Shu Lingling left, I followed Li Anqi into her office. The moment I stepped inside, she slammed her lesson plan onto the desk with a loud bang. Looking at me angrily, she said, "Zhao Yang, I really didn't expect you to do something like this. Do you know what stealing means?" I immediately replied, "Do you really think I'm that kind of person?" Li Anqi glared at me and said, "Then explain where that money came from." I answered, "I found it." The moment those words left my mouth, her expression became even darker. "You still want to say you found it? Yesterday you found food, and today you found money?" She slammed her hand onto the table again and shouted, "Zhao Yang, do you really think I'm stupid?" I looked straight at her and said, "They don't believe me, and now even you don't believe me?" Li Anqi replied coldly, "Why should I believe you? Even now, you still haven't realized your mistake. How can I possibly be engaged to someone like you?" The more she spoke, the angrier she became. It was obvious that she felt disgusted by the idea of marrying someone she believed was a thief. Hearing those words, I completely lost my temper. "Believe it or not, I'm furious too," I shouted before turning toward the door. "Stop right there," she yelled from behind me. I paused and said coldly, "If you don't believe me, then I have nothing more to say. Li Anqi, remember this. I, Zhao Yang, would rather die poor than do something like that." After saying those words, I walked straight out of the office. The moment I stepped outside, I could still hear Li Anqi angrily shouting from inside, "If you want to leave, then leave. Fine, get out." I was angry too. After all these years, she still refused to trust me. Since that was the case, there was no reason for me to return home. Besides, I had money now. Buying another house wasn't a big deal anymore. I could move out and finally stop living under Li Anqi's control. Just thinking about it made me feel relieved. I made up my mind immediately. Today, I was moving out. Leaving the school behind, I hailed a taxi and headed straight for the most luxurious residential development in the city. As soon as I walked into the sales office, several salespeople instinctively stood up. However, after taking a careful look at me, they all sat back down. These experienced salespeople had sharp eyes. They could instantly tell who was here to buy a house and who was only here to look around. Looking at my young age and worn clothes, they obviously placed me in the second category. Seeing that nobody intended to serve me, I didn't get angry. I had already experienced this kind of treatment many times. Looking around the sales office, I casually asked, "How much does this house cost?" One of the veteran salespeople glanced at me impatiently before calling out, "Zhao Zhang, go talk to him and send him on his way. When you show him the model apartment, make sure he doesn't break anything." Hearing her instructions, the intern hurried over. She carefully looked me up and down. Although I clearly didn't look like someone who could afford a house here, her seniors had told her to receive me, so she politely stepped forward and prepared to introduce herself. "Sir, this apartment is 60 square meters." The intern was patiently introducing the property to me when the veteran salesman from earlier suddenly lit up with excitement. His face instantly filled with a flattering smile as he hurried toward the entrance. Curious, I turned around and saw a well-dressed young man with slicked back hair walking in confidently. Looking at him, I felt a sense of familiarity, but for a moment I couldn't remember where I had seen him before. The salesman rushed over and greeted him enthusiastically. "Young Master Joe, you're here. Which apartment are you planning to reserve today? All of our units come fully furnished with high-end decorations and luxury furniture. They're absolutely worthy of your status." His smile was so exaggerated that it looked as though he wanted to personally carry Zhou Qiang inside. Zhou Qiang casually waved his hand and said, "Show me the best one." The salesman immediately replied, "Of course. The best one." His voice was loud and excited, as if he wanted everyone in the sales office to hear it. Hearing that voice and seeing the young man more clearly, I suddenly remembered who he was. Wasn't this Zhou Qiang, the young Master Joe I had run into at the Golden and Silver restaurant? The guy who had tried to take my private room? What a coincidence. After hearing Zhou Qiang's request, the salesman's smile grew even wider. "Young Master Joe, you've definitely come to the right place." He quickly escorted Zhou Qiang into the lobby. After offering him water and chatting with him briefly, the salesman became even more enthusiastic. It was obvious he had already confirmed Zhou Qiang's identity and financial status. Meanwhile, Zhou Qiang still remembered how embarrassed he had felt at the Golden and Silver restaurant the previous day. Back then, the manager's attitude had made him extremely uncomfortable. As a wealthy young master, he had actually been treated worse than an ordinary poor kid. But today was different. The veteran salesman's service was impeccable, and that finally soothed his wounded pride. "Take me to see the best unit," Zhou Qiang repeated. The salesman was secretly overjoyed. In his mind, the commission worth tens of thousands of yuan was practically already in his pocket. "Of course, young Master Joe, please come this way. The unit you're interested in is especially convenient. If you complete the payment today, you can move in immediately." Hearing that, I spoke up from the side. "That's exactly what I need too. Take me along later and let me have a look as well." The salesman immediately glanced at me with disdain and sneered. "You should first think about whether you can even afford it." I frowned and asked, "Didn't I arrive before him? Why can he see it but I can't?" The salesman looked at me mockingly and replied, "Can you compare yourself to him? Young Master Joe is one of our VIP clients." As soon as those words were spoken, Zhou Qiang looked in my direction. The moment he saw me, he froze slightly and immediately straightened up. Staring at me with surprise, he said, "What? You know him?" I looked at the veteran salesperson and said, "I'm not here to use your Wi-Fi, and I'm not just wandering around." Then I turned toward the intern. "Xiaozhang, haven't you finished introducing the place yet?" Before she could answer, the veteran salesperson impatiently waved his hand and said, "Tell him to leave already. Young Master Joe hasn't even seen the house yet." I frowned and asked, "Why won't you let people view the properties here? Do you think this is some exclusive restaurant?" Hearing that, Zhou Qiang immediately looked at me with a mocking smile and said, "Not everyone is as blind as Manager Lee." Then he turned to the salesperson and added, "He wants to see it? Fine, take him with us. Let him look around and give up on his unrealistic dreams. He's addicted to showing off anyway." After saying that, Zhou Qiang strode confidently toward the interior of the building. Since he had already spoken, the veteran salesperson couldn't refuse. He glared at me impatiently and said, "Then follow us. What a troublesome day." Without saying anything else, I followed the intern inside. Soon we arrived at the model unit. The veteran salesperson proudly introduced it. "Young Master Joe, this is the best property we have, the king of all our units. It's 180 square meters, and all the furniture is top quality." He tossed the key forward, unlocked the door, and let us inside. I had to admit that the house was impressive. It was spacious, well-ventilated, and luxuriously decorated. Zhou Qiang looked around, and his eyes immediately brightened. "If I could live here by myself, that would be quite prestigious." The salesperson smiled and asked, "What do you think, young Master Joe?" Then he quickly added, "Don't let the quality fool you. For someone like you, the price is very reasonable. It's only 7.5 million yuan. I'll even give you a discount, 7.2 million in total. Isn't that a great deal?" The moment Zhou Qiang heard the price, his expression froze. His eyes widened slightly. 7 million yuan. Although he came from a wealthy family, his monthly allowance was only 200,000 yuan. He had also bought a new sports car recently, so there was no way he could casually spend 7 million on a house. Still, he couldn't admit that. Losing face in front of everyone was the last thing he wanted. The salesperson kept smiling and said, "For someone like you, this amount of money should be nothing. The important thing is living comfortably, right?" Zhou Qiang forced a smile and replied, "Yes, but this house..." Instead of finishing his sentence, he began wandering around the property, obviously searching for excuses. After a while, he pointed around the room and said, "I'm not very satisfied with the location. It's in the city center, and there's too much traffic every day. I don't even see parking spaces." The salesperson immediately answered, "There's no need to worry about parking. We have private garages." Then he enthusiastically added, "In fact, including the house and garage, the total is only 8 million. Hearing that number, Zhou Qiang nearly shouted, 8 million. He couldn't even afford 7 million, let alone 8. Still unwilling to admit the truth, he quickly said, The lighting isn't very good either. And I don't like this sofa. I hate leather furniture. Also, the marble floor is too hard. What if I accidentally fall and break my leg? By this point, the veteran salesperson completely understood what was happening. He carefully looked Zhou Qiang up and down before saying, "Young Master Zhou, if none of this satisfies you, then you probably won't find a house that satisfies you anywhere in Linjiang City." Then his tone became more meaningful. "Don't tell me you think it's too expensive. A lot of customers with limited budgets use those same excuses." The moment his thoughts were exposed, Zhou Qiang immediately became defensive. "Too expensive? Me? Do you know who I am? I'm Zhou Qiang. Do you think I care about such a small amount of money?" The salesperson quickly smiled and replied, "Young Master Zhou, you misunderstood me. I didn't mean that." Then he changed the subject. "How about this? We have other properties available. They're much cheaper, only 1 or 2 million yuan. They might suit your requirements better." It was obvious that he had already given up on selling this mansion and was trying to salvage another deal. Zhou Qiang instantly became angry. "Are you looking down on me?" By then, I had already finished looking around the property and stepped further inside with the intern. After examining everything, I nodded and said, "The house is nice." The veteran salesperson rolled his eyes and said, "What nonsense." Then he impatiently waved at me. "Finished looking? Hurry up and leave. If you can't afford it, why are you even here?" Before I could answer, Zhou Qiang looked at me with disdain and said, "He doesn't even want the house. What makes you think you do? Do you know what kind of place this is? You probably can't even afford the toilet in this bathroom." Then he laughed and added, "If I'm having trouble buying this house, a poor loser like you definitely can't afford it." I ignored him and turned to the intern. "You salespeople earn commissions based on performance, right?" The intern nodded, looking slightly confused. "Yes." I pointed toward the house and said calmly, "Then I'll take this one." I paused for a moment before adding, "And I want the garage too." Then I pulled out my bank card and handed it to her. The veteran salesperson was instantly stunned. His eyes widened in disbelief. After all, Zhou Qiang had been calling me a poor nobody this entire time. Looking at the card in my hand, he was completely speechless. The intern, on the other hand, was overjoyed. She had only been working here for a few days, yet she had suddenly landed such a massive deal. Excitement filled her face as she immediately took the card and prepared to process the purchase. "What are you standing there for?" I said. "Take me to swipe the card." The intern nodded repeatedly and hurried away with me. Behind us, Zhou Qiang looked at me with obvious disdain and said, "You really think he's some important person? If he can actually buy this house, I'll admit I was wrong." A little while later, I returned with the intern. Looking at Zhou Qiang and the veteran salesperson still standing there, I calmly said, "Why are you still here? This house belongs to me now. You should leave." Zhou Qiang immediately shouted in disbelief, "Impossible! This house costs more than 7 million yuan. How could you possibly afford it?" At that moment, the intern respectfully handed several documents to me and said, "Sir, this is your purchase contract. Please keep it safe." I took the contract and receipts from her. The moment Zhou Qiang saw the stack of documents in my hands, he froze. "What?" he muttered. "He really bought it? More than 7 million yuan. Even Zhou Qiang himself couldn't come up with that amount of money at once, and he knew very well that even his father would have difficulty producing that much cash immediately. His face instantly turned red. The embarrassment was even worse than being slapped twice in public. Unable to endure it any longer, he turned around and left without another word. The veteran salesperson wasn't feeling any better. Looking at me, he felt like slapping himself. Nearly 100,000 yuan in commission had slipped right through his fingers because of his own arrogance. The thought was so painful that he could barely accept it. As he reflected on everything, he realized that Zhou Qiang wasn't actually some top-tier young master. In a city like Linjiang, he was merely a third-rate rich kid, insignificant among the truly powerful people. He also remembered Zhou Qiang complaining that manager Li from the Golden and Silver restaurant didn't understand how to treat important guests. Thinking about it now, that was obviously nonsense. The Golden and Silver restaurant was one of the best establishments in the city. How could its manager fail to recognize important people? It was far more likely that Zhou Qiang simply lacked the status to meet genuinely influential figures. Compared to manager Li, the veteran salesperson suddenly realized how inexperienced he still was. After everyone finally left, I dropped onto the sofa inside my new house. A wave of exhaustion washed over me, and for the first time that day, I felt a little relaxed. Not long afterward, I received a call informing me about my uncle's birthday banquet at the Golden and Silver restaurant. I immediately took a taxi there. When I arrived at the entrance, Lianqi was already waiting outside. The moment she saw me stepping out of a taxi, her expression darkened. "You came by taxi again," she said coldly. "You're completely hopeless. Let me tell you something, Zhao Yang. I'm not helping you cover up stealing money. You can say you didn't steal it all you want, but it doesn't matter. You'll never amount to anything in this life." I looked at her and replied calmly, "That's not necessarily true." My answer only seemed to annoy her more. Just then, her aunt walked over. Looking at me with obvious disdain, she said, "There's no point wasting time talking to someone like him. Just look at his character. He's hopeless. Let's go inside." She rolled her eyes at me before pushing Li Anqi toward the restaurant entrance. As soon as I entered the restaurant, Manager Li hurried over with a respectful expression. "Mr. Zhao, why didn't you tell me you were coming? I'm sorry if there was any offense." She had probably overheard part of the conversation outside, but I didn't feel like explaining anything. I simply said, "It's fine. I'm just here for a family gathering." Manager Li smiled respectfully and replied, "I understand." Mr. Zhao has always been low-key. There was obvious admiration in her eyes. I nodded and walked into the banquet hall. Inside, Li Anqi was already chatting with relatives. Her aunt glanced at me from time to time, and every comment she made only made me more irritated. Still, I walked over to my uncle and said sincerely, "Happy birthday, uncle." Before he could reply, my aunt immediately interrupted. Looking at the gift I brought, she sneered, "Coming empty-handed would be embarrassing enough. Where did you even get the money to buy that? If it weren't for our Anqi, you'd never be able to afford a place like this in your entire life." My uncle immediately looked uncomfortable. "That's enough," he said. "Xiaoyang is still young. He has a long future ahead of him." But my aunt became even more displeased. "Did I say anything wrong? I just feel sorry for Anqi having to be tied to someone like him." My uncle sighed and gently patted my shoulder. I could only smile bitterly. I had already gotten used to this kind of treatment. Many times before, I had simply endured it in silence. I stepped aside and found a seat. Just then, a young man walked over to my uncle and greeted him politely. "Happy birthday, Uncle Li. My mother is away on a business trip and couldn't make it back, so she asked me to come and apologize on her behalf." The moment she saw him, my aunt's attitude changed completely. Her face lit up with a bright smile. "No problem at all. Come in and have a seat." Someone nearby whispered, "That's Cheng Yu, the young master of the Cheng family. He's young and very capable." I watched as my aunt quickly pulled Li Anqi to the side and said enthusiastically, "Anqi, this Cheng Yu is young and promising. Didn't you say you wanted to start an education company? This is a great opportunity. You should talk with him." Hearing that, I immediately felt uncomfortable. I had a bad feeling about what she was trying to do. Ignoring Li Anqi's hesitation, my aunt practically dragged her over to Cheng Yu. As they were introduced, Cheng Yu politely extended his hand. Li Anqi briefly shook it. Watching from the side, I felt strangely uneasy. My aunt smiled proudly and said, "Cheng Yu is much more outstanding than certain people." Even though she never said my name directly, her eyes immediately shifted toward me. Cheng Yu glanced at Li Anqi and modestly replied, "Auntie, you're praising me too much." Eventually, Cheng Yu noticed me sitting nearby. Before he could ask anything, my aunt quickly said, "Oh, him? He's just a poor relative of ours who came to join the celebration." She deliberately avoided mentioning that I was actually Li Anqi's husband. Cheng Yu simply glanced at me. He didn't greet me, and I didn't greet him either. Without saying anything further, I sat down next to Li Anqi and quietly continued eating. My aunt kept placing food onto Cheng Yu's plate, and before long, the conversation shifted to clothing. Looking at his outfit, she smiled and said, "Cheng Yu, your suit looks really nice." Cheng Yu smiled politely and replied, "It's custom made overseas. Auntie, if you like it, just tell me Uncle's size and I'll buy him a few suits next time." My aunt was instantly delighted. Turning to Li Anqi, she said, "Anqi, you know your uncle's size, right? Cheng Yu, you can send her a message on WeChat." Cheng Yu immediately took out his phone and said, "It's fine. A few suits are nothing. I didn't have time to prepare a birthday gift today, so let this make up for it." Watching him exchange contact information with Li Anqi made me feel strangely uncomfortable. I knew they hadn't done anything wrong, but I still felt a pang of jealousy in my chest. My aunt noticed my expression right away and sneered, "What's wrong? Feeling jealous? With your little bit of ambition, don't even dream about it." Then Cheng Yu casually looked at me and asked, "So, where do you work?" Before I could answer, my aunt cut in and said, "He's just a poor student. What ambition could he possibly have?" Cheng Yu laughed faintly and said, "How about this? After you graduate, come work at our company. For Auntie's and Anki's sake, I'll arrange a good position for you." Before I could even refuse, my aunt immediately became excited and said, "Don't be shameless. Do you know how rare this opportunity is? They're only willing to help because of the Li family." Just then, Li Anqi suddenly spoke up. "Aunt, stop talking." Both my aunt and Cheng Yu were startled. Li Anqi continued, "Today is Uncle's birthday. Don't ruin the atmosphere." After saying that, she glanced at me. The tiny bit of hope I had instantly disappeared. For a moment, I had thought she was speaking up for me, but I had clearly overestimated things. Looking at me with disgust, she said coldly, "If you like high-class things, then earn them yourself. What kind of man relies on improper methods?" I lowered my head and continued eating without saying a word. I had already explained everything I could. There was no point repeating myself. Just then, Manager Li suddenly walked over and looked at me before saying, "Xiao Zhao, the payment for the favor you did for us last time hasn't been fully settled yet. This is the rest of it." He placed a thick stack of cash in front of me. I smiled faintly. "What payment?" Everyone at the table immediately looked over with curiosity. Manager Li continued, "Last time you came over, I only paid half of what I owed you, remember?" As he spoke, he gave me a subtle wink. I immediately understood that he was trying to help me save face. Unfortunately, my aunt completely misunderstood the situation. She looked at me and sneered, "Just a moment ago, Chung Yu was trying to introduce you to a proper job. And now we find out you're working as a waiter. What a loser." Chung Yu smiled and added, "A job is a job after all. How about this, Xiao Zhao? If work gets tiring, just come eat at the restaurant and put it on my tab." Then he confidently patted Manager Lee on the shoulder and said, "Manager Lee, you have to give me some face." Manager Lee merely smiled without responding. I looked at the stack of cash in front of me, then at Chung Yu's smug expression, and finally at the contempt on my aunt's face. My eyes eventually landed on Lianqi, who had turned her face away. In the end, I left the cash on the table and chose not to explain anything. Manager Lee chased after me afterward to apologize, but I stopped him. I knew he had only been trying to help. After returning home, I went straight to sleep and didn't wake up until morning. As expected, I was late again. When I arrived at the classroom door, I immediately saw Lianqi standing at the podium. She saw me too, and her face was already filled with anger. The moment our eyes met, I understood what was coming. Before she could scold me, I quickly stepped back outside the classroom, voluntarily accepted my punishment, and even closed the door behind me. Leaning against the wall outside, I let out a sigh of relief. At least I had avoided the initial explosion. A loud bang suddenly echoed from inside the classroom as Lianqi slammed her lesson plan onto the podium. Even standing outside, I was startled. Her temper seemed to be getting worse and worse lately. After class ended, I hurried back to my seat. The moment I sat down, Xu Lingling swaggered over with her usual arrogant expression. Looking at me, she mocked, "Zhao Yang, you still have the nerve to come to class? If I had done what you did, I'd be too embarrassed to show my face." Zheng Yang immediately chimed in, "Exactly. Using class funds to eat and drink extravagantly and then acting like nothing happened? That's shameless." Xu Lingling nodded and added, "We just don't have skin as thick as his." I finally couldn't stay silent anymore and snapped, "The two of you should stop talking nonsense." Zhang Yang scoffed and said, "What? You dare to do it, but you're afraid people will talk about it?" Just then, a commotion came from outside, and before long, Lianqi returned to the classroom. Her voice instantly silenced everyone. Looking directly at Xu Lingling, she asked, "Xu Lingling, are you absolutely certain that Zhao Yang took the class funds?" Xu Lingling immediately replied confidently, "Teacher, I'm sure it was Zhao Yang." Zhang Yang quickly added, "That's right, teacher. How can we concentrate on studying with someone like him still in our class?" Lianqi frowned and raised her voice. "Xu Lingling, I'll ask you one more time. Are you sure you didn't put the class funds somewhere yourself and then forget about it?" Xu Lingling looked confused and immediately responded, "Teacher, what do you mean by that? I'm sure Zhao Yang took the money. It has to be him." Lianqi suddenly slammed her hand onto the table, and the entire classroom fell silent. Even my heart skipped a beat. I had no idea why she was so angry today. Looking around the room, she said coldly, "Didn't I tell all of you not to jump to conclusions before the matter is properly investigated?" Then her eyes landed on me. She glared at me fiercely and added, "And you, Zhao Yang, if you didn't do it, then don't you know how to explain yourself properly?" Before I could respond, Zhang Yang stood up and said, "Teacher, the matter of Zhao Yang taking the class funds has already been investigated. How can you say it hasn't? Are you trying to protect him?" Xu Lingling immediately nodded in agreement. "That's right, teacher. It was obviously him. You can't protect him just because he's poor and pitiful." "Enough!" Lianqi's voice exploded across the room. She stared directly at Zhang Yang and said, "Who gave you permission to speak?" Then she suddenly pulled out an envelope and slammed it onto the podium. Looking at Xu Lingling, she said, "Xu Lingling, come here and take a look at this. I just found it in the office." The moment Xu Lingling saw it, her face changed. She hurriedly said, "Teacher, it wasn't me, it was Zhao Yang. Maybe he worked together with the restaurant owner to frame me." Hearing that excuse only made Lianqi even angrier. "Xu Lingling, even now you refuse to admit your mistake. Not only do you refuse to take responsibility, but you're also framing your classmates. Call your parents tomorrow. And from this moment on, you're no longer the class monitor." After saying that, she turned around and walked away in her high heels. I stood there, feeling slightly uneasy. Lianqi had actually spoken up for me today. With the truth finally revealed, I felt much better. Thinking about the expression on Xu Lingling's face just now, I almost wanted to laugh. Unfortunately, Lianqi happened to see my smirk as she reached the classroom door. She immediately turned around and said, "Zhao Yang, don't think this has nothing to do with you. You bear a lot of responsibility too. And you still dare to laugh?" I instantly shut my mouth and didn't dare say a word. I knew better than to celebrate too early. After Lianqi left, Xu Lingling slowly returned to her seat. Her eyes were red, her fists were tightly clenched, and she glared at me with obvious hatred. At that moment, I knew this grudge had truly begun. After school, Lianqi stopped me at the gate. Looking at me, she said, "Zhao Yang, I have something to do tonight. You'll have to take care of dinner yourself." After saying that, she turned around and left without giving me a chance to respond. I stood there for a moment before hailing a taxi home. When the taxi stopped at the entrance of my residential complex, the driver looked outside and exclaimed, "Young man, you live here?" I didn't expect someone so young to be this capable. I casually replied, "It's not bad." The driver then looked at me and said, "Since you live in such a nice place, why don't you buy a car?" His words immediately made me pause. He had a point. I had money now, and I already had my driver's license. There was no reason not to buy one. Acting on the idea immediately, I asked the driver to take me to a BMW dealership. When we arrived, I pushed open the door and walked inside. Several salespeople looked in my direction and were about to stand up, but after seeing my clothes, they all sat back down. Not a single person came over to greet me. I wandered around the showroom by myself. Just then, a wealthy-looking woman entered the store. The moment she appeared, all the salespeople rushed toward her, offering tea and water. Compared to her, I was completely ignored. The woman glanced at me and smiled mockingly before saying, "Don't all crowd around me. There are other customers here too. Even if he can't afford a car, he's still a customer." The salespeople exchanged glances, but not one of them was willing to come over. I eventually stopped in front of a display vehicle and asked, "How much is this car?" One salesperson glanced at me impatiently and replied, "It's the new BMW 7 Series." I frowned and said, "BMW 7 Series? I don't understand all that. I'm asking how much it costs." The dismissive look in their eyes made it obvious they thought I couldn't afford it. Feeling irritated, I turned around and walked straight out of the BMW dealership. Across the street was a Rolls-Royce showroom, and I headed there without hesitation. The next morning, I parked my newly purchased car near a restaurant some distance away from the school because I didn't want to attract attention. After arriving in the classroom, I noticed there weren't many people there yet. Feeling bored, I started scrolling through WeChat moments on my phone. Suddenly, a post from Zhu Lingling caught my attention. The car in her photo looked strangely familiar. I zoomed in on the image, and after looking carefully, I was stunned. It was my Rolls-Royce, the one I had just bought yesterday. The caption beneath the photo read, "Dad's new car. Not bad." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Since when had I become her father? As more classmates arrived, many immediately gathered around Shu Lingling. One classmate exclaimed, "Lingling, your dad actually bought a Rolls-Royce Phantom? What does your family do? I remember your dad used to drive a BMW. That's a huge upgrade." Another quickly added, "Yeah, I heard a Phantom isn't cheap, and this looks like the latest model. It must have cost a fortune." Hearing all the praise, Shu Lingling secretly enjoyed every second of it. Pretending to stay calm, she said, "It's only a few million yuan, I guess. My dad just likes this kind of car." In reality, earlier that morning, while waiting for the bus, she had spotted the Phantom parked across the street. Since the owner wasn't around, she had secretly snapped a few photos of it. After losing face in class yesterday, she clearly wanted to regain some pride today. "Envy is useless. You're destined to drive a second-hand Jetta for the rest of your life," Shu Lingling said as she slammed her backpack onto her desk and sat down. Then she looked at me and sneered, "And Zhao Yang, don't think you're so high and mighty just because you have Teacher Li backing you. This isn't over between us yet." I couldn't be bothered listening to anything she said. My mind was completely occupied by the woman who had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. The more I thought about it, the funnier it became. Just then, a voice suddenly came from the classroom door. "Which one of you is Zhao Yang?" The school's academic affairs director had appeared. Feeling annoyed, I stood up and walked out. Why would the director want to see me? The director looked me over disdainfully before taking me straight to Li Anqi's office. Li Anqi was already sitting there. When Xu Zhenghua saw me being brought in by the director, he frowned. After looking me up and down, he glared at me as if wondering what trouble I had gotten into this time. Xu Zhenghua was Shu Lingling's second uncle, and the person who had arranged for her to enter this school. The moment I saw him, I knew he had come to stand up for Shu Lingling. Inside the office, Li Anqi sat behind her desk while Xu Zhenghua stood beside her with an unfriendly expression. Looking at Li Anqi, he said, "I heard you've been protecting Zhao Yang and even want to call Shu Lingling's parents. I'm her uncle. What exactly is going on?" Li Anqi calmly replied, "Director Shu, I wasn't protecting Zhao Yang. Shu Lingling really was responsible for losing the class funds. If necessary, we can ask the restaurant owner to come and confront her." Xu Zhenghua immediately interrupted. "Teacher Li, if you weren't protecting Zhao Yang, then how did rumors like this spread? As a teacher, you should understand what fairness means." It was obvious he had no intention of discussing the facts. He simply wanted to pressure her. Then he pointed at me and said, "Zhao Yang is your student. Look at him. Does he look like a proper student? His grades are terrible, and he drags down the entire grade. Why haven't you talked to his parents?" His voice grew louder and louder. Li Anqi opened her mouth and tried to explain. "Zhao Yang, he..." Before she could finish, Xu Zhenghua cut her off again. "You keep saying you're not protecting him. If you continue acting like this, then you can forget about participating in the teacher evaluation." His threat was direct and merciless. I knew how much that evaluation meant to Li Anqi. She had spent nearly half a year preparing for it. Looking at her slightly reddened eyes, I felt extremely uncomfortable. No matter what, she was still my wife. Seeing her being bullied like this made my chest tighten with anger. Xu Zhenghua wasn't finished yet. Looking at me, he said, "And you, Zhao Yang, just because you come from a poor background doesn't mean everyone has to pity you. You're a student. You're here to study, not to play the victim." He lectured us for a long time before finally leaving. Once he was gone, the office became quiet. Lianqi rubbed her forehead and looked exhausted. Then she glanced at me and said, "The director is already gone. Why are you still standing here? If your grades were better, would there be so many problems?" After saying that, she shooed me back to class. I wanted to say something, but in the end, I stayed silent and left. After school, I originally wanted to wait for her and leave together. I even wanted to comfort her after everything that had happened. Unfortunately, she left before I got the chance. With nothing else to do, I went to pick up my car. Just as I got inside, my phone rang. The caller was Li Chengli, the female manager of Elite Restaurant. "Mr. Zhao, this is Li Chengli. Our restaurant just received a shipment of top-quality imported ingredients. I specifically reserved some for you. Are you free today? We've also launched our newest signature dish. Nobody else has tried it yet. We're waiting for you. Please honor us with your presence." Thinking about how unfairly Lianqi had been treated today, I decided to pack a few dishes for her and cheer her up. So I agreed and headed to Elite Restaurant. When I arrived, Manager Li personally came out to greet me. After finishing my meal, I asked her to package several dishes for takeaway. While waiting near the entrance, I suddenly saw Xu Zhenghua approaching. The moment he noticed me, he immediately straightened his back and puffed out his chest. Looking me over, he asked, "You're not working here, are you?" I didn't answer. Seeing my silence, he became even more convinced of his assumption. "So you really are working here as a waiter. Do you know what people would think if they found out? You're bringing shame to the school. Tomorrow, I'm reporting this to the administration. Prepare your apology. You don't need to attend the school's job fair either. I knew you'd turn out like this. I really don't know how Lianqi teaches students." Hearing that, I immediately replied, "Being a waiter is a legitimate job. How exactly is that a stain?" Xu Zhenghua's expression darkened. "What do you know? You still dare to talk back? Believe me, I can put a major disciplinary mark on your record." The angrier he became, the harsher his words grew. "And that Lianqi," he continued, "I really don't know what kind of second-rate teacher's college she graduated from. She can't even manage a single student properly." The moment I heard him insult Lianqi again, my own temper flared up. Looking directly at him, I said, "Teacher Li is very good. What does my job have to do with Teacher Li?" Xu Zhenghua immediately sneered. "Look at this. This is the kind of student Lianqi teaches, talking back to school staff without any respect." Then he pointed at me and said coldly, "You still dare to argue with a teacher? You'll be punished tomorrow." After a brief pause, he added, "And Lianqi won't escape responsibility either. She's your homeroom teacher. You think someone at her level deserves to be called an excellent teacher? She's not even qualified to be a teacher." I didn't expect Lianqi to get dragged into this again. Not wanting to make things worse for her, I forced myself to stay silent and could only glare at Xu Zhenghua. When he saw the look in my eyes, he snorted coldly and said, "What are you staring at? You really have no manners." Then he looked at me with undisguised contempt. "Even after you enter society, you'll never amount to anything." Just then, a Mercedes-Benz pulled up outside the restaurant. The door opened, and Zhou Chang stepped out before slowly walking toward us. "Director Xu, what's going on?" he asked. "Why are you so angry?" The moment Xu Zhenghua saw him, his attitude changed completely. He quickly put on a smile and greeted him warmly. "Young Master Zhou, I just ran into a troublesome poor student." Then he pointed at me and continued, "He's poor, has no future, and refuses to improve himself. If his family circumstances weren't so pitiful, he would have been expelled long ago." After saying that, he shot me another glare. Zhou Chang was about to enter the restaurant when he casually looked in my direction. The moment he saw me, he froze. His expression changed instantly, and he abruptly stopped walking. Completely unaware of what was happening, Xu Zhenghua pulled me forward and said impatiently, "Do you have any sense of etiquette at all? This is young Master Zhou. Hurry up and greet him." Then he smiled at Zhou Chang and added, "Young Master Zhou, please forgive him. This kid hasn't seen much of the world. He's never met someone of your status before." The moment those words fell, Zhou Chang's face turned pale. He looked at me, then at Xu Zhenghua, and his expression became increasingly awkward. A second later, he hurriedly said, "I suddenly remembered I have something to do. I won't be eating here today." After saying that, he practically ran away. Within moments, he had gotten back into his car and driven off. Xu Zhenghua stood there completely stunned. Then his expression darkened, and he turned toward me in fury. "You little brat! You actually scared young Master Zhou away," he shouted. "Do you even know who he is? He's the school's new investor. Such an important investment project, and now you've ruined everything." The more he spoke, the angrier he became. "You're finished, and Lianqi too. Tomorrow I'm going straight to the principal. If she keeps protecting you, neither of you will escape responsibility." After throwing out those threats, he stormed away. A moment later, Manager Li walked out carrying the food I had asked her to pack. Seeing Xu Zhenghua leave in a rage, she looked puzzled and asked, "Mr. Zhao, what happened?" I smiled faintly and shook my head. Nothing, thank you. Taking the food from her, I got into my car and headed home. When I arrived, I placed the packaged dishes on the dining table. Looking at Lianqi, I said, "You didn't eat dinner yet, right? I brought you some food from Elite Restaurant." Lianqi glanced at the food, and her brows immediately furrowed. "You went there to spend money again?" she said unhappily. "How much does a waiter even earn? Yet you keep spending lavishly every day. What kind of future do you think you'll have?" I quickly explained, "You misunderstood. Manager Lee said I've been performing well recently, so she gave this to me as a reward. It was just made today. It's fresh and clean." Hearing that, her expression softened slightly. She snorted and sat down at the table. Remembering everything that had happened earlier, I tried to comfort her. "Don't let today's events bother you too much." But the moment she thought about Xu Zhenghua again, her mood worsened. Looking at me, she said, "Tell me honestly, if your grades were better, would Xu Zhenghua have been able to use you as an excuse to make trouble?" I remained silent. Back when my grades weren't good enough to get into Jiangda University, it was Li Anqi who had run around everywhere helping me. Seeing me say nothing now only made her angrier. "Tell me," she continued, "with your current situation, which company would even hire you? Do you really plan to be a waiter for the rest of your life?" She had already suffered enough humiliation today, so I didn't dare argue with her. Instead, I quietly said, "Don't worry, I'll work hard in the future. I'll definitely find a good company and never embarrass you again." Li Anqi rolled her eyes at me. Then she suddenly remembered something and said, "The school's job fair is in a few days. You'd better perform well. Don't make me lose face in front of everyone again." After saying that, she stood up, returned to her room, and slammed the door shut. I could only let out a helpless sigh. I was already rich, but that didn't change Li Anqi's opinion of me at all. Even if I told her the truth, she probably wouldn't believe me. The next morning, Li Anqi and I went to school together. Not long after class started, Xu Zhenghua appeared at the classroom door once again. "Zhao Yang, come out here!" The moment she heard that, Xu Lingling immediately looked delighted. It was obvious that Xu Zhenghua had already told her about what happened with Zhou Qiang yesterday. Her eyes were filled with anticipation, as if she couldn't wait to see me get into trouble. I was taken directly to the principal's office. As soon as we entered, Xu Zhenghua immediately bowed slightly toward Principal Huang and said, "Principal, I've brought Zhao Yang. Teacher Li should be here soon as well." Principal Huang glanced at me and frowned. Then he looked at Xu Zhenghua and asked, "Who told you to call Teacher Li over?" Xu Zhenghua was briefly stunned. However, he assumed the principal was angry because the investment had been ruined. He quickly said, "Principal, I'll notify her right away. She doesn't need to come." He immediately called Li Anqi and told her not to come before putting his phone away and standing straight again. Then he pointed at me and said, "Principal, it was this student who drove young Master Zhou away yesterday. That investment was extremely important to the school, but he ruined everything. I already warned him, but he still didn't know his place and ended up offending Zhou Qiang." Xu Zhenghua continued adding fuel to the fire. "That's right, Principal. Because he offended Zhou Qiang, the investment is probably gone now." Principal Huang lowered his voice and said, "I was there too, but I couldn't stop him from speaking recklessly. I really tried my best. Zhao Yang's grades weren't even good enough to enter our school in the first place. We only made an exception because of his family circumstances." Xu Zhenghua put on a heartbroken expression and said, "Principal, Li Anqi is Zhao Yang's homeroom teacher. She failed to educate him properly and allowed him to become arrogant and reckless. That's why all of this happened. As his teacher, she should also bear responsibility." After saying that, he stepped aside, secretly pleased with himself. Standing there in the principal's office, he was doing everything he could to shift the blame onto me while completely absolving himself of any responsibility. In his mind, neither Li Anqi nor I would escape punishment this time. If I were expelled, it would also help vent his niece Xu Lingling's anger. Just then, Principal Huang slowly nodded and said, "You're right." Hearing that, Xu Zhenghua immediately became excited. He hurried to the principal's side with a flattering smile and said, "Principal, it's all thanks to your wise leadership and excellent teaching." Before he could finish, Principal Huang suddenly slammed his fist onto the desk with a loud bang. The sound startled everyone in the room, especially Xu Zhenghua. "Are you praising me?" Principal Huang said coldly. "Zhao Yang is still a student. He has little experience dealing with society, yet you're placing the entire responsibility for a failed investment on a student's shoulders?" His expression darkened. "Xu Zhenghua, where is your sense of shame?" Xu Zhenghua's face instantly turned pale. "Principal, no, let me explain." "Explain what?" Principal Huang interrupted him sharply. "You don't need to worry about the investment anymore." Hearing that, I suddenly understood. It seemed Zhou Qiang had already contacted the principal regarding the investment issue. That was probably why Principal Huang's attitude toward me had changed. Xu Zhenghua, however, was still desperately trying to defend himself. "Principal, it really is Zhao Yang's fault. He offended the investor. It has nothing to do with me." Principal Huang stared at him and said, "As a teacher, you pushed all the responsibility onto a student. You've truly disappointed me." Xu Zhenghua immediately pointed in another direction. "This also has something to do with Li Anqi, and now you're trying to drag someone else into it?" Principal Huang cut him off again. "Xu Zhenghua, take a good look at yourself. Where is the dignity and professionalism a school leader should have? Go back to your office and reflect on your behavior." Xu Zhenghua was instantly silenced. With no room left to argue, he could only lower his head and leave the office in humiliation. I stood there feeling confused by the entire situation. After Xu Zhenghua left, Principal Huang looked at me for a moment and said, "As a student, focus on your studies and do what you're supposed to do. Don't overthink things and don't disappoint me." I immediately nodded and replied, "I understand, Principal." After that, I returned to the classroom. Not long later, Xu Lingling came back as well. The moment she saw me sitting in my seat, she raised her voice and shouted, "Zhao Yang, how dare you still come back to class? You ruined such a huge investment for the school and you still have the nerve to sit here." Her words instantly caught everyone's attention. The entire class became curious. "What investment?" someone asked. "Lingling, what happened?" Seeing everyone gather around her, Xu Lingling immediately became excited. "Our school has been looking for investors recently," she said proudly. "I heard that if the investment goes through, the school's ranking and status will rise dramatically. It might even become comparable to top universities." Then she glanced at me with obvious disdain. "But now it's all ruined because of Zhao Yang. He offended the investor and caused everything to fall apart. Who knows when the school will find another investor?" Hearing that, many students became upset. "Seriously?" one student said. "Some people are only good at causing trouble." Another added, "No way. We never heard anything about this." Someone else looked confused and said, "Zhao Yang is just an ordinary student. How could he even know an investor, let alone offend one?" Several students nodded in agreement. "That's right. Are you sure you heard correctly?" Seeing that nobody believed her, Xu Lingling immediately raised her voice. "Of course I'm sure. My uncle is Xu Zhenghua, the director of our school. He told me personally. How could it possibly be fake?" Zhang Yang immediately jumped in to support her. "That's right. I can testify. It's true." The classroom instantly erupted into discussion. "Wait, Lingling, your uncle is Xu Zhenghua?" someone asked in surprise. "Why have you never mentioned that before?" Another student said enviously, "That's amazing. I'm so jealous." Listening to everyone's reactions, Xu Lingling became even more proud. "Zhao Yang, why did you provoke the investors? Look at what you've done now. You've dragged all of us down with you." One classmate pointed at me angrily. "Your poor grades and refusal to study are your own problems, but why should they affect our future? Don't you know that the school's ranking affects our job opportunities after graduation?" Another student immediately added, "That's right. If we can't get into good companies in the future because of this, can you take responsibility?" Listening to the accusations flying around the classroom, I felt as if countless voices were buzzing around my head. It was nothing but noise. Finally, I couldn't help speaking up. "Who told you the investment failed?" The moment I said that, Xu Lingling let out a cold laugh. "Still being stubborn?" she sneered. "You know exactly what happened. Don't think you're safe just because you're still sitting in the classroom. The school leadership is probably discussing how to expel you right now." Looking at her, I couldn't help thinking she was completely ridiculous. Xu Lingling pointed at me and continued, "Enjoy yourself while you still can. My uncle already said this incident had a huge impact on the school. The fact that they're only expelling you and not making you pay compensation is already letting you off easy." However, after waiting and waiting, no disciplinary notice ever came. Xu Lingling was clearly becoming restless. Soon class began, and Li Anqi walked into the classroom. The moment she entered, Xu Lingling immediately raised her hand. Li Anqi glanced at her and said impatiently, "What is it now?" Xu Lingling stood up and pointed at me. "Teacher Li Anqi, Zhao Yang ruined the school's investment and caused such a huge disaster. Why is he still allowed to sit in the classroom?" Then she continued loudly, "This time, Zhao Yang affected the entire school. We can't just pretend nothing happened." Li Anqi's expression immediately darkened. "Xu Lingling, what nonsense are you talking about?" Xu Lingling refused to back down. "Teacher, I'm not making things up. Zhao Yang offended the investors because he didn't understand how the world works." Then she repeated everything Xu Zhenghua had told her. After listening, Li Anqi frowned even more. "I've never heard anything about that." "Teacher, it's true," Xu Lingling insisted. "Enough!" Li Anqi suddenly slammed her lesson plan onto the desk. The entire classroom fell silent. Looking directly at Xu Lingling, she said, "Didn't I already tell you not to jump to conclusions before a matter has been properly investigated?" Her voice became even colder. "Stop spreading rumors based on hearsay. You're students. Your priority should be studying. Don't you understand that?" Li Anqi's scolding echoed through the classroom. Nobody dared to say another word. Xu Lingling could only sit back down unwillingly. No matter how much she thought about it, she couldn't understand why Zhao Yang seemed completely unaffected after causing what she believed was such a huge problem. After school ended, I waited for Li Anqi outside the school gate. When she came out, she didn't even look at me and walked straight ahead. I quickly caught up and said, "Let's go out for dinner tonight. I've already made a reservation." Li Anqi didn't even slow down. "I have something to do tonight," she replied coldly. Then she looked at me with obvious dissatisfaction. "Were all the things I told you before just a waste of breath? Just because you suddenly have a little money, you think you can spend it however you want? At this rate, what kind of future do you think you'll have? This restaurant is already expensive, and now you've booked such a great table. It It must have cost a fortune, right? My aunt said, her smile growing wider and wider. Chung Yu smiled calmly and replied, as long as Auntie likes it, that's all that matters. It really wasn't expensive. Even Chung Yu hadn't expected that he would be able to get such a premium private table. Before long, one exquisite dish after another was served, and my aunt couldn't stop praising them. After chatting for a while, Chung Yu finally brought up what he really wanted to discuss. Auntie, Anchi seems very busy lately. I've sent her several messages, but she hasn't replied. My aunt was briefly stunned before quickly speaking on Li Anchi's behalf. She's been busy with her educational institution recently. She barely has any free time. Hearing that, Chung Yu immediately straightened his back and said, what a coincidence. Our company has been looking into investing in educational institutions recently, and that project happens to fall under my supervision. My aunt's eyes instantly lit up. Really, Xiao Yu? Then she eagerly added, you have to help Anchi if you can. She had been looking for an opportunity to bring the two of them closer together, and now one had practically fallen into her lap. Chung Yu smiled confidently and said, for Auntie's sake, investing in Anchi's institution is definitely possible. Recently, I've been handling most of the company's affairs anyway, so approving an investment wouldn't be difficult. My aunt looked even more impressed. Your father is already letting you manage the company? Chung Yu nodded proudly. Yes, my dad hopes I can take over as soon as possible. Hearing that, my aunt became even more excited. These days, most rich kids only know how to spend money and have fun. How many of them are as capable and reliable as you? Chung Yu smiled modestly and replied, Auntie, you're praising me too much. The more my aunt looked at him, the more satisfied she became. Then, as always, she suddenly thought of me. Her expression immediately darkened. It's such a pity, she sighed. A good girl like Auntie ended up tied to Zhao Yang, a beautiful flower stuck in cow dung. The more she talked, the angrier she became. Look at Zhao Yu, then look at that Zhao Yang. He's not young anymore, yet he has absolutely no ambition. He's poor and refuses to improve himself. The moment he got a little money, he didn't even know how to behave. Just mentioning my name was enough to make her grit her teeth. Ever since the last banquet, she had been furious because I hadn't given her any face. Around that time, I arrived at the restaurant. After showing my reservation information, a waiter respectfully led me inside. I had reserved VIP table number 1. However, the moment I got close, I discovered that 2 people were already sitting there. Even the waiter looked surprised. He quickly walked over and politely asked, Sir, are you a guest at this table? Chung Yu nodded and replied, Yes. What's the problem? As he was speaking, my aunt looked up and spotted me standing nearby. Her expression instantly soured. Why do I keep running into him everywhere? She muttered irritably. Then she glared at me and said, What bad luck. Looking me up and down, she added sarcastically, How did you even get into a place like this? Did you find another part-time job here? I slowly walked over. Before I could say anything, my aunt raised her hand and interrupted me. Don't call me Auntie. Her face was full of contempt. What? Is the salary from Jinyin restaurant not enough anymore? So now you're working here too? With how extravagantly you spend money, you'd probably starve to death if you didn't keep taking extra jobs. Then she pointed toward Chung Yu and scolded, Young Master Chung is sitting right here, and you don't even know how to greet him properly. You have no manners at all. Before I could respond, Chung Yu smiled faintly and said, It's all right, Auntie. I won't lower myself to argue with a student. My aunt immediately nodded. Exactly. Xiao Yu is too generous to stoop to his level. What a spineless brat. Then she turned toward the waiter and said angrily, Isn't this supposed to be a high-end restaurant? Why are you hiring just anyone? If someone like him is working here, aren't you worried about ruining the restaurant's reputation? The waiter hurriedly replied, Madam, this gentleman isn't... Before he could finish, my aunt interrupted again in her shrill voice. What? He didn't even pass the interview? Then why is he still standing here? Hurry up and leave. You're embarrassing yourself. Finally finding an opportunity to speak, the waiter quickly explained, Madam, you've misunderstood. This gentleman is actually a guest at this table. There may have been a mistake with the seating arrangements. He's here to eat? My aunt repeated in disbelief. Chung Yu also laughed. This is his table? Are you sure you didn't make a mistake? Look at him. Does he seem like someone who could reserve a table here? Maybe he used fake reservation information. My aunt immediately nodded. That's right. Zhao Yang, being poor is one thing, but using shameless tricks to freeload your way into a restaurant is another. Looks like you finally got caught today. Then she turned to the waiter and said confidently, Check again. We're definitely at table number 1. Chung Yu pulled out his phone and handed over his reservation information. Looking at me with disdain, he said, Zhao Yang, I never expected you'd resort to something like this just to get a meal. Tell you what, I'll ask them to add another dish and let you eat with us. It's only one meal. It wouldn't look good if you got thrown out later. The waiter carefully checked the reservation details. Chung Yu's information clearly showed VIP table number 1. But when he checked mine, it also showed VIP table number 1. Looking back and forth between the two reservations, he froze in confusion. Meanwhile, my aunt impatiently urged him, "What are you standing there for? Why aren't you leaving?" My aunt impatiently pointed at me and said, "He really has the nerve to let young Master Chung treat him to dinner." The waiter checked the reservation information over and over before finally finding the problem. Looking embarrassed, he explained, "You've misunderstood. This gentleman's reservation is actually for the VIP table number 1. Your reservation is for a regular table near the entrance of the main hall." It turned out the two reservation records looked almost identical, with the only difference being the VIP mark at the end. The moment she heard that, my aunt frowned and shouted, "That's impossible! You must have made a mistake! Look at him! He probably can't even afford street food, let alone a VIP table here." At that moment, Chung Yu finally understood why he had booked an ordinary table, but had been seated in such a premium location. The waiter quickly explained, "The employee who brought you here today is new. We're very sorry for the mistake." Then he pointed toward another area of the restaurant and said, "Your table is over there. I'll personally take you there now." My aunt still refused to believe it. "Impossible. You've definitely made a mistake. How could he possibly afford a table like this?" If she had accidentally taken someone else's table, she probably wouldn't have reacted so strongly. But the fact that it was my table made it impossible for her to accept. More than anything, she felt humiliated. Looking at the waiter, she shouted again, "Check it one more time." Chung Yu's expression was equally unpleasant. My aunt's loud outburst had already attracted the attention of many nearby guests, making the atmosphere extremely awkward. Trying to salvage the situation, Chung Yu suddenly said, "If that's the case, then upgrade our table to a VIP table." The waiter immediately shook his head and replied politely, "I'm sorry, sir. All of our VIP tables are fully booked tonight. Could you please return to your original seats and allow Mr. Zhao to use his table?" "What?" my aunt exclaimed. The waiter continued patiently, "Please return to your seats first. I'll speak with the manager and arrange a discount for you as compensation. We've already caused inconvenience to other guests, and this really was our mistake." My aunt rolled her eyes and said sharply, "What are you staring at? He can afford the table, but can he afford the food?" Hearing that, even the waiter frowned slightly. Looking at the scene in front of me, I suddenly smiled and said, "There's no need." Everyone immediately looked at me. Then I calmly continued, "Since they like this table so much, let them have it. Put all the food on my bill." The waiter froze. I looked at my aunt and said, "Eating alone isn't very interesting anyway. Auntie, since you like it so much, then enjoy it. Don't say I don't respect my elders. Consider this my treat." Then I took out a stack of cash and dropped it onto the table. Without waiting for anyone to respond, I turned around and walked out of the restaurant. Behind me, my aunt and Chung Yu were left standing there with extremely ugly expressions. The next day, I arrived at school and had barely stepped into the classroom when Xu Lingling suddenly called out, "Zhao Yang, are you coming to the class reunion tonight?" I didn't even think about it before answering, "No." Inwardly, I sneered. Xu Lingling usually disliked me so much. Why would she suddenly invite me to dinner? There was obviously something suspicious about it. She clearly hadn't expected me to reject her so decisively. "Zhao Yang," she said, "this is our class's final gathering. Everyone's going." Before I could reply, Zhang Yang immediately jumped in. "What's wrong? Are you looking down on your classmates?" Several other students joined the conversation. "Yeah, Zhao Yang. Everyone's going except you. We're graduating soon. It's just one meal. What's the big deal?" Hearing Zhang Yang's mocking tone, I frowned. If you're all trying this hard to get me to go, then there's definitely a reason. You guys have fun. I'm not interested. Seeing that I wasn't falling for it, Zhang Yang immediately changed his approach. "Zhao Yang, are you still angry about what happened with Lingling before? We've been classmates for years. Is it really necessary to hold a grudge?" The other students finally seemed to understand why I was refusing. One of them quickly said, "Come on, it was just a misunderstanding." Another added, "It's been so long already, you're not still upset about that, are you?" Xu Lingling also looked at me and said, "Yeah, Zhao Yang, we're all classmates. Don't be so narrow-minded." Then she took a deep breath and said, "How about this? I'll apologize. What happened last time was a misunderstanding. I'm sorry, is that enough?" Another classmate immediately chimed in. "See? She already apologized. You'll come now, right? Don't be so petty, Zhao Yang. Can't you be a little more generous?" Listening to them, I couldn't help sneering inwardly. When they were falsely accusing me and humiliating me before, none of them talked about friendship or understanding. But now, suddenly, everyone wanted to be classmates again. Still, with everyone pressuring me like this, refusing any longer would only make things more troublesome. In the end, I sighed and reluctantly agreed. That evening, I arrived at the hotel where the reunion dinner was being held. After all the classmates had taken their seats, Xu Lingling suddenly stood up and smiled brightly. Looking around the room, she announced, "Classmates, my cousin just returned from overseas." Just then, the door to the private room was pushed open, and a well-dressed young man walked inside. Xu Lingling immediately stood up with an excited smile. "Everyone, this is my cousin." The moment some of the classmates got a clear look at him, they were stunned. "Wait, is that Wu Haoshan?" Someone blurted out. "The young master of Wu family real estate?" Another student immediately widened his eyes. "No way, seriously?" Seeing everyone recognize him, Xu Lingling became even more smug. She lifted her chin proudly and said, "That's right. Wu family real estate belongs to my cousin's family." The moment she confirmed it, the entire room became even more lively. "Lingling, your cousin is actually young Master Wu. You have such an amazing cousin and never told us? That's incredible." Surrounded by everyone's admiration, Wu Haoxian simply smiled and greeted the room politely. "Hello, everyone." Then he looked around at the private room and frowned slightly. "This room is a little too small. Let's move somewhere bigger." He smiled casually and added, "Since you're all Lingling's classmates, that makes you my friends too. Tonight's meal is on me." The room instantly erupted with excitement. As expected of the Wu family, young Master Wu is really generous. He can casually pay for a meal like this without even blinking. Wu Haoxian merely smiled indifferently. "You're all exaggerating. It won't cost much." Soon, everyone moved into a much larger private room. I quietly found a seat in the corner and sat down by myself. Unfortunately, Wu Haoxian happened to notice me. Remembering what Xu Lingling had told him about me before, he frowned slightly. So this was Zhao Yang, the person who had supposedly bullied his cousin. Looking me over from head to toe, he silently thought there was nothing special about me. A moment later, he picked up a glass of wine and walked over. "Why are you sitting here so quietly, classmate?" he asked with a smile. Before I could answer, someone nearby laughed and said, "Young Master Wu, you don't need to pay attention to him. Zhao Yang has always been like this. We're all used to it." Wu Haoxian smiled, raised his wine glass and said, "Since we're all here together, let's have some fun. Come on, have a drink with me." I looked up and immediately shook my head. "Sorry, I don't drink." The truth was that I had deliberately driven here tonight so it would be convenient to go home afterward. If I drank, I wouldn't be able to drive back. Of course, I couldn't tell them that, so I simply refused. The moment those words left my mouth, Zhang Yang immediately became unhappy. "Zhao Yang, what do you mean by that?" he said loudly. "Young Master Wu is offering you a drink, and you won't even accept. Do you really think you're somebody important?" Wu Haoxian smiled on the surface, but there was already a trace of displeasure in his eyes. "I don't mind," he said lightly, "but aren't you ruining everyone's mood a little?" It was obvious he felt offended. After all, very few people dared to reject him so directly. Seeing the atmosphere becoming awkward, I frowned and reluctantly picked up a glass of water. "I'm really sorry," I said. "I honestly can't drink alcohol. Let me apologize to everyone with water instead." Before I could even take a sip, Wu Haoxian suddenly slammed his wine glass onto the table. Without another word, he turned around and walked back to his seat. In his eyes, I clearly didn't know my place. Zhang Yang immediately pointed at me and started criticizing me again. "Zhao Yang, you're way too arrogant," he shouted. "Young Master Wu only asked you to have a drink. He wasn't asking for your life. You really don't know what's good for you." Meanwhile, Wu Haoxian simply waved his hand and looked at me with obvious disdain. "Forget it," he said coldly. "If he doesn't want to drink, then don't force him." The meal continued, but the atmosphere around me became noticeably colder. Eventually, dinner came to an end, and everyone began preparing to leave. Just then, Zheng Yang stood up and went to the restroom. However, he didn't return for a long time. When he finally came back, his expression looked nervous and flustered. Zhu Lingling immediately noticed something was wrong. "Why were you gone so long?" she asked. "What happened?" Zheng Yang hesitated before speaking. "After I finished using the restroom, I ran into a couple of thugs." His voice grew weaker as he continued. "They bumped into me first, and they were already cursing at me. I couldn't help talking back a few times." "Then what happened?" Xu Lingling quickly asked. Zhang Yang swallowed nervously. "Then they told me to wait here." The more he spoke, the less confident he sounded. Nothing bad should happen, right? They were the unreasonable ones first. After finishing, he cautiously looked toward Wu Haoxian. Wu Haoxian simply smiled and waved his hand dismissively. "It's nothing." Leaning back in his chair, he said confidently, "The owner of this place is a friend of mine. As long as I'm here, who would dare cause trouble? Don't worry about it." The door to the private room was suddenly kicked open with a loud bang. A burly man with a face covered in scars stormed inside with a group of thugs behind him. The atmosphere in the room instantly froze. One of the thugs pointed at Zhang Yang while covering his swollen cheek and shouted, "Brother Long, that's the guy!" Brother Long narrowed his eyes and slowly walked toward Zhang Yang. "So you're the one who hit my man?" Before anyone else could react, Zhang Yang suddenly stood up with his chest puffed out. With Wu Haoxian standing behind him, he felt completely fearless. Looking directly at Brother Long, he said arrogantly, "That's right, it was me. So what if I hit him?" Then he raised his voice even higher. "Do you know who's sitting here? How dare you come here and act wild?" Hearing that, Brother Long's expression immediately darkened. "I don't care who's here," he said coldly before waving his hand. "Grab him!" Several men immediately rushed forward and pinned Zheng Yang to the ground. "Stop!" Wu Haoxian suddenly stood up and walked over confidently. Brother Long glanced at him and frowned. "And who are you?" he asked. Believe it or not, I'll have someone drag you out too. Wu Haochen sneered and straightened his collar. I'm Wu Haochen. Wu Family Real Estate is the largest shareholder of this hotel. Before I call someone over, I suggest you get lost. Hearing that, Brother Long's eyes narrowed slightly. Wu Family Real Estate? For a moment, he remained silent. Seeing that reaction, Wu Haochen became even more arrogant. That's right. If you know what's good for you, get your people out of here immediately. Zhang Yang immediately thought the situation had been resolved. Standing behind Wu Haochen, he grinned smugly and shouted, "What are you waiting for? Do you think you can afford to offend young Master Wu?" Sitting quietly in the corner, I watched everything unfold. Looking at Zhang Yang's behavior, I couldn't help feeling that he perfectly embodied the arrogance of someone who bullied others by relying on powerful connections. After thinking for a moment, Brother Long finally spoke again. Fine. I can let him go. Then his expression turned cold. But he beat my brother, so he has to give us an explanation. Wu Haochen immediately understood what he meant. How much do you want? He asked while taking out his wallet. In his mind, Zhang Yang had only slapped the other party a few times. At most, it should cost 20 or 30,000 yuan. Brother Long raised 3 fingers. 3 million. The entire room instantly fell silent. Even the classmates who had been enjoying themselves moments ago were stunned. 3 million yuan was not exactly an impossible amount for Wu Haochen, but he had recently bought a new car and was short on cash. More importantly, spending 3 million yuan to save Zhang Yang simply wasn't worth it. If word got out that he had been extorted by a group of thugs, he would become a laughingstock. Thinking of that, his expression darkened. 3 million? He said coldly. You're extorting us. Brother Long's face instantly turned grim. You won't pay? He waved his hand. Then don't blame us for being ruthless. Several of his men immediately surrounded Zhang Yang and began punching and kicking him mercilessly. The arrogance vanished from Zhang Yang's face in an instant. He curled up on the ground and screamed miserably. Wu Haochen frowned and shouted, "What are you doing? This is my territory!" Then he raised his voice even more. My father is Wu Guofeng. If he finds out about this, none of you will escape. Before he could continue, Brother Long suddenly shouted, Stop! Seeing the beating stop, Wu Haochen became even more confident. At least you're smart enough to understand the situation, he said smugly. Apologize now, and maybe I'll consider letting you go. Brother Long suddenly laughed. Young Master Wu, you've misunderstood. His eyes became cold. I already figured it out. No matter what happens, your father won't let us off. Since the outcome is the same either way, we might as well settle things thoroughly. Then he pointed at Wu Haochen. Saving him is impossible, but letting you take a beating with him is still an option. The moment those words fell, several thugs rushed forward and pinned Wu Haochen to the ground as well. From the very beginning, Brother Long had already disliked his arrogant attitude. Wu Haotian's face turned pale. What are you doing? My father will never let you get away with this, Brother Long sneered. Then let him come find me afterward. He waved his hand again. Beat them. The next moment, fists and kicks rained down on both Zhang Yang and Wu Haochen. Their screams echoed throughout the private room. You just wait! Wu Haochen shouted between screams. My father definitely won't forgive you. Hearing the threat, Brother Long merely ordered his men to hit harder. The rest of the classmates were completely terrified. Not a single person dared step forward. Meanwhile, I remained standing in the corner and quietly watched. Honestly, seeing Zhang Yang get beaten up gave me a certain sense of satisfaction. Someone like him had caused trouble for so many people that a lesson wasn't entirely undeserved. However, I hadn't expected things to escalate this far. If the beating continued, someone could end up seriously injured. No matter what, Zhang Yang was still my classmate. After hesitating for a moment, I finally stepped out from the corner. One of the thugs immediately pointed at me and shouted, What? You want to get involved too? I ignored him and walked directly toward Brother Long. Then I leaned slightly closer and quietly said in his ear, 3 million is fine. Let's talk outside. Brother Long immediately froze. He looked me up and down carefully before following me out into the corridor. His eyes were filled with suspicion. Even Wu Haochen had hesitated when faced with 3 million yuan. Yet this poorly dressed young man had agreed without blinking. For the first time, Brother Long felt uncertain. Looking at me carefully, he wondered if I might actually be far more powerful than the Wu family. Remaining calm, I said, 3 million isn't the issue. You already know who Wu Haochen is. If this situation truly spirals out of control, things will become troublesome for everyone. Sometimes it's better to stop while you're ahead. I calmly handed Brother Long a bank card number and said, Transfer the money there. Once you get it, there won't be any trouble afterward. Brother Long quickly gave me the account information. Less than a minute later, 3 million yuan had been transferred into his account. Looking at the deposit notification on his phone, he was completely stunned. For a moment, he just stared at the screen in disbelief. Seeing his reaction, I frowned slightly and asked, What is 3 million too little? I was even wondering whether I needed to add more. Hearing that, Brother Long's heart nearly jumped out of his chest. 3 million yuan transferred without hesitation? He wouldn't dare ask for another cent. He hurriedly put away his phone and was about to head back into the room when I stopped him. Looking at him, I said quietly, "This matter stays between the two of us. I don't like being too high profile." Brother Long was stunned again, spending 3 million yuan to save someone and not even wanting credit for it. But after thinking about it, he suddenly felt that truly powerful people were probably like this. They didn't need attention or recognition. Nodding quickly, he replied, "I understand. I'll keep it low-key." Then the two of us returned to the private room together. The moment we entered, Brother Long immediately raised his voice and said, "Forget it. Let them go this time." His underlings looked confused, but none of them questioned him. Brother Long then walked over to me and said respectfully, "Brother, if you ever need anything in the future, just call me." After saying that, he led his men away. The moment they left, the room fell into complete silence. Every classmate looked stunned. Then one after another, they rushed over. "Zhao Yang, thank you so much." "That's right. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't even know what to do." Even young Master Wu got beaten up. I really thought something terrible was going to happen. "Zhao Yang, since when did you become this influential?" Listening to all the gratitude, I simply stood there quietly. However, standing nearby, Wu Haoshen's expression became uglier and uglier. Suddenly, he said coldly, "You knew Brother Long, didn't you?" Everyone immediately turned toward him. Wu Haoshen continued, "If you knew him, why didn't you say so earlier?" His voice carried obvious dissatisfaction. "I could have solved this myself eventually, but you waited until now to step in. Did you deliberately want to watch us embarrass ourselves?" Then he pointed at Zhang Yang and added, "Look at him. He's your classmate. How could you just stand there and watch him get beaten up?" The moment those words fell, Xu Lingling immediately joined in. "That's right! Zhao Yang and Zhang Yang are your classmates. We've known each other for years. How could you be so heartless?" Wu Haoshen nodded and continued fanning the flames. "Even if you wanted to teach him a lesson because of past misunderstandings, you didn't need to use a method like this." Xu Lingling also shouted, "Exactly. If you knew those people, then you should have stepped forward from the beginning. Why wait until Zhang Yang got beaten half to death?" Soon several classmates started echoing their opinions. "Yeah, Zhao Yang, no matter what, Zhang Yang is still our classmate." Hearing all of that, I almost laughed out of anger. Inwardly, I sneered. I had spent 3 million yuan to help them, yet somehow I was the villain. When they told me to stay out of it earlier, nobody complained. When I finally stepped in and solved the problem, suddenly everything became my fault. It was as if I was wrong no matter what I did. Looking around the room, I said coldly, "I came here for a reunion dinner and somehow ended up getting blamed for everything. Next time you have this kind of gathering, don't bother inviting me." Then I turned around and walked out without looking back. Honestly, if I had known things would end like this, I would have rather stayed in the corner and watched. At least that would have saved me 3 million yuan and a lot of trouble. After I left, many of my classmates gradually realized that what I said actually made sense. Wait, Zhao Yang was the one who got Brother Long to let everyone go. Yeah, if Zhang Yang hadn't gone outside and started trouble, none of this would have happened. Why are we blaming Zhao Yang? Hearing those discussions, Wu Haoshen became even angrier. In his mind, everyone acting as if Zhao Yang had saved him was the greatest humiliation of all. Did he, Wu Haoshen, really need Zhao Yang's help? The more he thought about it, the more resentful he became. Meanwhile, I drove home while holding back my frustration. The moment I walked through the door, I saw Li Anqi sitting on the sofa with a cold expression. My heart immediately skipped a beat. Carefully walking over, I asked, "What happened?" Without looking at me, Li Anqi said, "My aunt wants us to have dinner with her tomorrow night. We're going together." After saying that, she stood up and returned to her room. Only after her door closed did I finally breathe a sigh of relief. But then, another thought crossed my mind. My aunt had never liked me. Why would she suddenly invite me to dinner? The next afternoon, Li Anqi and I arrived at the restaurant together. The moment we walked in, my aunt immediately waved enthusiastically at Li Anqi with a bright smile on her face. However, the smile froze the instant she noticed me standing beside her. "You came too?" she asked awkwardly. At the same time, I noticed Cheng Yu sitting beside her. Everything suddenly became clear. This wasn't a family dinner at all. My aunt had obviously arranged this meeting to bring Li Anqi and Cheng Yu together. As for me, her so-called nephew-in-law, she hadn't taken me seriously from the very beginning. Looking annoyed, my aunt quickly pulled Li Anqi aside and whispered, "Why did you bring her with you?" "Auntie, didn't you invite us to dinner?" "What's wrong?" Li Anqi asked as she calmly sat down beside me, directly across from Cheng Yu. My aunt immediately became both anxious and irritated. Looking at me, she clearly wanted to say something harsh, but she swallowed the words back down. In her eyes, I was the kind of person who followed Li Anqi everywhere, completely lacking any ambition of my own. Chung Yu, however, acted as if none of it bothered him. He smiled and stretched out his hand toward Li Anqi. "Miss Li, we meet again." Before Li Anqi could respond, I suddenly reached forward and firmly grabbed Chung Yu's outstretched hand. Looking at him, I smiled and said, "Mr. Chung, I really didn't expect we'd meet again either." Chung Yu's expression immediately stiffened. He quickly pulled his hand back and frowned. Soon the dishes began arriving one after another. My aunt immediately picked up a piece of food and placed it into Li Anqi's bowl. "Anqi, this is the restaurant's signature dish. Xiao Yu specially ordered it for you. Hurry up and try it." Before Li Anqi could even react, I reached over with my chopsticks, picked the food out of her bowl, and stuffed it into my own mouth. After chewing for a moment, I nodded and said, "Not bad. It's actually pretty delicious." Young Master Chung really knows how to order food. Li Anqi immediately shot me an annoyed look. "All you know how to do is eat." Chung Yu glanced at me with obvious disdain before turning back to Li Anqi. "Miss Li, our company will be recruiting at your school tomorrow. If you're interested, or if there's anything you need help with, feel free to tell me." Then he smiled and added, "Last time I was only joking. If you ever want to join our company, I'd be happy to help." Before Li Anqi could respond, I immediately interrupted. "You should at least know your own value before talking about joining someone else's company." My aunt instantly glared at me in anger. Then she forced a smile and looked at Li Anqi. "Anqi, didn't you say recently that there were some financial matters you didn't understand? Xiao Yu definitely knows all about those things. Let him explain them to you." Chung Yu smiled modestly. "If there's anything you don't understand, I'd be happy to help." I immediately spoke up again. "Young Master Chung seems very knowledgeable. I happen to have a lot of questions too. Why don't you explain them to me first?" The moment I opened my mouth, my aunt's expression darkened. It was obvious that no matter what they talked about tonight, I was going to interrupt. Finally, she could not hold back anymore. Looking at me, she shouted, "Shut up!" I calmly looked back at her and said, "Auntie, weren't you always saying I lacked ambition? Young Master Chung is so outstanding. I'm just trying to learn from him." My aunt clenched her teeth, shot Chung Yu an apologetic glance, then suddenly stood up. Looking at me, she said, "Zhao Yang, come outside with me." I looked at the food in front of me and replied, "What is it now? I haven't even finished eating." "Come out right now," she snapped. Without waiting for my response, she grabbed my arm and dragged me outside. The moment we reached the corridor, my aunt exploded. "Do you know what you're doing?" she demanded angrily. "Chung Yu and Anqi were discussing important matters." I immediately laughed. "Important matters? You just want to create an opportunity for Chung Yu to get close to Anqi, don't you?" My aunt snorted coldly. "Look at yourself first. Do you really think you're worthy of Anqi?" Hearing that, I clenched my fists. "Auntie, you're an elder. Don't you think that's a bit too much?" "Too much?" she said mockingly. "You're completely useless. Not only can't you help Anqi, but now you want to ruin her future too. Do you know what kind of status Chung Yu has? Helping Anqi would be effortless for him. If she stays with you, she'll suffer for the rest of her life." I was stunned for a moment. "What future are you talking about?" My aunt looked at me as if I were hopeless. "You don't even know. Anqi has been busy setting up an educational institution recently. Right now, she urgently needs investment. Chung Yu can solve that problem with a single sentence, but you insist on interfering." Hearing that, I finally understood. So this was what Li Anqi had been busy with all this time. Just as I was thinking about it, the restaurant door opened, and both Li Anqi and Chung Yu walked out. Looking annoyed, Li Anqi said, "Auntie, something suddenly came up. I'm leaving." My aunt was completely caught off guard. Before she could react, Li Anqi turned toward me and said impatiently, "Why are you still standing there? Let's go." Without saying anything else, I immediately followed her out. Behind us, my aunt hurriedly turned to Chung Yu and said apologetically, "Young Master Chung, I'm really sorry. Anqi has always been very focused on her career. Please don't take it personally." Chung Yu smiled politely and waved his hand. "It's all right. We can always meet again another time." On the surface, he appeared generous and understanding, but I could clearly tell that he was extremely displeased inside. The more I thought about him, the more annoyed I became. "Just wait until you fall into my hands one day. I'll make you regret everything." Trying to calm myself down, I turned toward Li Anqi and asked, "I heard you've been busy setting up an educational institution lately." Li Anqi frowned slightly and glanced at me. "My aunt told you that?" I looked straight at her and asked, "Just answer me. Is it true or not?" Her expression immediately turned cold. "So what if it is? And so what if it isn't?" Then she looked at me suspiciously and continued, "Don't tell me you're thinking about getting into my institution through my connections. Let me make this clear. Don't even dream about it. What you should be doing right now is preparing your resume and finding a decent job at the recruitment fair in a few days." I nodded and replied, "Okay, I understand. Although she never answered directly, the truth was already obvious. Knowing Li Anqi's personality, I understood that she would never casually accept investment or help from other people. I wanted to help her, but I couldn't do it openly. Just then, I noticed the restaurant ahead and suddenly had an idea. Stop the car up there, so I said. Li Anqi immediately frowned. What are you going to do now? I quickly made up an excuse. The restaurant manager just messaged me. They're really busy tonight and asked me to work overtime. Hearing that, Li Anqi looked disgusted. How much overtime pay can a waiter even earn? You're still going to work this late at night? That's all you're good for. Quit that job before you embarrass me again. After you find a proper job in a few days, then we'll talk. She stepped on the brakes at the intersection and stopped the car. Walk over yourself. I don't want people seeing me dropping off a waiter. After getting out of the car, I watched her leave before heading toward the restaurant. The moment I stepped inside, Manager Li Chengli spotted me and hurried over with a huge smile. Mr. Zhao, what an honored guest. Why didn't you call ahead? I would have prepared a private room for you. I raised my hand and smiled. I'm not here to eat today. Actually, I have a personal matter I'd like your help with. Ever since she learned that I was an incredibly wealthy heir, Li Chengli had been doing everything she could to build a good relationship with me. The moment she heard that I needed help, her eyes lit up. She knew her opportunity had arrived. Mr. Zhao, please speak freely, she said immediately. As long as it's within my ability, I'll definitely help you solve it. I nodded and got straight to the point. I want to establish an investment company. However, because of some special circumstances, I can't personally appear as the owner. So I'd like to know whether you have any trustworthy connections who could help me handle this. Before I could even finish speaking, Li Cheng immediately nodded and said, I understand. You wealthy families always like to use this kind of method to test a person's abilities, right? I smiled and replied, that's pretty much what it means. If you can handle this successfully, I might even consider letting you become the general manager. The moment he heard that, Li Cheng's eyes lit up with excitement. He looked thrilled as he assured me, Mr. Zhao, don't worry. Leave this matter to me. I've been a manager here for many years and have plenty of connections. Give me 3 days and I'll have everything arranged perfectly. I nodded and said, that would be for the best. The reason I wanted someone to establish an investment company was because of the educational institution Li Anqi was currently worrying about. Over the years, all my food, clothing, and daily expenses had been provided by her. Now that she was facing difficulties, it was time for me to repay her kindness. Having Li Cheng handle the matter was undoubtedly the most suitable choice. 2 days later, Li Cheng called me and said excitedly, Mr. Zhao, the matter you asked me to handle has already been taken care of. All that's left is for you to come and make the final arrangements. I was genuinely surprised and replied, that fast? It seems you really are efficient. Li Cheng laughed happily and said, not at all, Mr. Zhao, you flatter me. When working for you, this kind of speed is the minimum requirement. When do you have time to come take a look? Not wanting Li Anqi to keep running around because of this issue, I said, send me the address. I'll head over right now. Soon I arrived in front of a 5-story office building. Li Cheng was already waiting at the entrance. As soon as he saw me, he said, Mr. Zhao, this is the company I plan to acquire for you according to your requirements. What do you think? During our earlier discussions, I had already made it clear that the size of the company didn't matter. Speed was what mattered most, and direct acquisition was undoubtedly the fastest solution. Looking at the building, I asked, the entire building? Li Cheng nodded and replied, yes, if you feel it's not enough, we can look for another one. I shook my head and said, this is enough. The size of the company isn't important. He quickly agreed. Exactly. For an investment company, operational capability is what truly matters. Although their business performance is average, they have a complete and mature operating system. If we acquire them today, investments can begin immediately tomorrow. I nodded in satisfaction. That's even better. That's exactly the point I value. Li Cheng smiled and said, then I'll go bring the owner over so you can discuss everything face to face. I waved my hand and replied, go ahead, I'll look around first. While waiting, I casually wandered around the first floor and decided to take a look at the second floor. As I stood by the elevator, a young girl carrying a huge stack of folders came wobbling toward me. Suddenly, she lost her balance and cried out, ah! The folders were about to spill everywhere. Without thinking, I rushed forward and helped steady them. She let out a relieved sigh and said, thank you. I smiled and replied, you're welcome. Let me help carry those. Which floor are you going to? Taking the folders from her hands, I heard her say, sorry for troubling you. Second floor. I chuckled and said, what a coincidence. I'm going to the second floor too. Inside the elevator, she looked at me curiously and asked, I've never seen you before. You're probably not one of our employees, right? I shook my head. No, looking at how busy everyone is, business must be pretty good here. She forced a bitter smile and replied, not really. It's only average. Things aren't that great. The elevator arrived on the second floor. The moment we stepped out, a fat, big-eared man stormed toward us with an angry expression. Chen Shi, what are you doing? I told you to move those files and you're still so slow. Didn't you eat enough? The girl immediately stiffened. It was obvious she was afraid of him. Then the man noticed me. Pointing in my direction, he barked, "And who is this kid? You even need help carrying files? If you're that delicate, why are you even working?" Lowering her head slightly, Chen Shui explained nervously, "Manager Wang, you misunderstood. We met downstairs. He was just being kind and helped me." Manager Wang snorted coldly. "So because you randomly met someone, you just brought him into the company? What if something gets stolen? What if business secrets get leaked? Can you take responsibility for that?" Chen Shui trembled and quietly said, "Manager Wang, Before she could finish, he interrupted her harshly. "What? Are you trying to argue with me? Let me tell you something. Forget about getting this month's bonus." The color drained from Chen Shui's face while Manager Wang looked extremely pleased with himself. Watching this unfold, I felt this man was completely unreasonable. Unable to stay silent any longer, I stepped forward and said, "Manager, I think you're going a little too far." He froze for a moment, then looked at me sideways and sneered, "Who the hell are you? How I manage my employees is none of your business." I calmly replied, "I'm only trying to say what's fair. There's no need to bully a young girl like this." Manager Wang immediately snapped, "Do you have nothing better to do than meddle in other people's business? I'll deduct whatever I want. You're just an outsider. You have no right to say a word, and I'm giving you 10 seconds to get out of here. Otherwise, I'll call security." When he saw that I had no intention of leaving, he shouted even louder, "You little brat! Why are you still standing there? I told you to get out. Are you deaf?" At that moment, Li Cheng noticed the commotion and quickly walked over to help me. Pointing at Manager Wang, he angrily shouted, "You idiot! How dare you speak to Mr. Zhao like that?" Then he turned to me and asked respectfully, "Mr. Zhao, are you all right?" I simply shook my head. Li Cheng immediately faced Manager Wang again and scolded him. "What kind of attitude was that? Hurry up and apologize to Mr. Zhao." Manager Wang looked stunned before bursting into laughter. "Apologize? Are you joking with me? Not only him, but you can get lost too. This is my territory. It's not your place to speak here." Before he could finish his sentence, a loud slap landed directly across his face. Everyone nearby froze in shock. Clutching his cheek, Manager Wang stared in disbelief and cried out, "Brother-in-law!" The man who had slapped him was a middle-aged man, the owner of the company. Looking at his rude and incompetent brother-in-law, the owner seemed so furious he wanted to strangle him on the spot. He roared, "Don't call me brother-in-law. I don't have such a useless brother-in-law." Panicking, Manager Wang stammered, "Brother-in-law, they—" But the owner cut him off with another furious shout, "Shut up!" Then he quickly turned toward Li Cheng and said apologetically, "Brother Li, I'm truly sorry. My brother-in-law is a complete fool. Please don't take it to heart." Li Cheng merely snorted and replied, "I don't really care. The important thing is what Mr. Zhao thinks." The owner immediately looked toward me with a nervous expression and said respectfully, "You must be Mr. Zhao. I sincerely apologize for what happened just now." As the owner of this company, a chill ran through Manager Wang's entire body as he stared at me in a daze, filled with regret. I didn't pay any attention to him because I had more important matters to handle. Turning to Li Cheng, I asked, "How did the negotiations go?" Looking somewhat embarrassed, he replied, "Based on my earlier investigation, this company was actually worth acquiring, and I had a good discussion with the owner. I just never expected there would be a manager like this. That was my oversight. If you want, I can find another company for you." The owner's heart immediately sank when he heard that, and he held his breath nervously. I shook my head and said, "There's no need for all that trouble. This company is fine. After all, I wasn't expecting to make money through this company. I only wanted to invest in Lianqi's educational institution as quickly as possible." Both Li Cheng and the owner were caught completely off guard by my decision. Realizing there was still hope, the owner was overjoyed and quickly said, "Mr. Zhao, you truly are generous. How about we go to my office and discuss things further? I can give you a detailed introduction to our company." I glanced at the time and remembered that the school's recruitment fair was about to begin. Shaking my head, I replied, "There's no need for introductions. Your company's business performance is average anyway. I never expected you to make me much money." Li Cheng was startled again, wondering how I even knew that. Before he could react, I continued, "I still have something important to do, so I'll be leaving first. Manager Li, I'll leave the rest to you." Li Cheng immediately nodded. "No problem, Mr. Zhao. Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. By the way, what should we do with this guy?" As he spoke, he glanced toward Manager Wang. I replied casually, "Handle it however you see fit, and if things get too busy, let Chen Shui help manage the company." With that, I pressed the elevator button and stepped inside. The moment the doors closed, the entire floor erupted into shocked whispers. Li Cheng instantly understood my meaning and asked, "Which one of you is Chen Shui?" Chen Shui was still standing there in a daze, unable to process everything that had happened. Only after hearing her name did she snap back to reality and timidly answer, "I'm Chen Shui." Li Cheng nodded and announced, "From today onward, you'll be the general manager of this company." Chen Shui's eyes widened in disbelief. At the same time, Manager Wong finally realized disaster had truly arrived. Looking desperately at the owner, he cried out, "Brother-in-law, if she becomes the manager, what about me?" The owner sighed helplessly and shook his head. "This is all your own fault. The company doesn't belong to me anymore. I can't help you now. Figure it out yourself." Panicking, Manager Wong begged, "Brother-in-law, at least say a few good words for me. If I lose my salary, how am I supposed to repay my gambling debts and mortgage?" The owner coldly snorted, "I've already done more than enough for you. I won't help you anymore." Desperate, Manager Wang immediately turned toward Li Licheng and pleaded, "Brother Li, please." But Li Licheng's expression remained icy. "Even if you called me dad, it wouldn't help. Mr. Zhao was already generous enough not to hold this against you. You should be thanking heaven for that. As for this job, forget about it. Now get lost." He then called over security guards and had Manager Wang thrown out of the company. After leaving the investment company, I drove straight toward the school. Unfortunately, traffic jams slowed me down and wasted valuable time. During the drive, my phone suddenly rang. The moment I answered, Li Anqi's slightly angry voice blasted through the speaker. "Zhao Yang, where the hell are you? Don't tell me you forgot today's recruitment fair." I quickly replied, "I didn't forget. I'm on my way right now. I'll be there soon." Hearing that only made her voice rise even higher. "You're still on the road? The recruitment fair has already started and you still haven't arrived. Do you even care about your future? Do you want to spend the rest of your life serving dishes in a restaurant?" I sighed helplessly and said, "Bad luck. I got stuck in traffic. There's nothing I can do." Lianqi coldly snorted. "If you had left half an hour earlier, would this have happened? You're always absent-minded. I honestly don't know what goes on inside your head all day." I couldn't help thinking, it's because I've been busy arranging your investment. Before I could explain, she sternly continued, "I'm giving you 15 minutes to appear in front of me. Otherwise, just wait and see what happens." The call ended immediately after that. Fortunately, I wasn't very far from the school anymore. Meanwhile, on campus, Li Anqi lowered her phone and shook her head in disappointment. Suddenly, a man's voice sounded nearby. "Teacher Li, did something troubling happen? Why are you standing here sighing all by yourself?" She turned and saw Chung Yu walking toward her with a bright smile. "Hello, Mr. Chung," she greeted politely, though her tone was noticeably cold. Chung Yu smiled and said, "You still haven't answered my question." Lianqi replied flatly, "That's my private business. It has nothing to do with you." Chung Yu laughed. "I'm only asking because your aunt asked me to look after you a little. If I'm not mistaken, you're worried about investment funding, aren't you?" Although Li Anqi had indeed been busy seeking investors lately, that wasn't what was bothering her now. Still, Chung Yu assumed she was simply being stubborn and continued, "Honestly, that's a very small matter for me. A few words from me and I could help you secure investment funding. There's no reason for you to stress over it. How about tonight we find a place to have dinner and discuss everything in detail?" "No." Lianqi rejected him immediately, her voice cold and decisive. Chung Yu's smile froze awkwardly. "Then perhaps we can talk about recruitment instead. Do you have any outstanding students you'd like to recommend? Any student you value will receive special treatment from our company." Li Anqi glanced at her watch and looked around repeatedly. It was obvious she wasn't listening to a word he said. At that same moment, I finally arrived at the school and began searching for her. After walking only a short distance, I overheard several female students whispering among themselves. "That's Chung Yu from Chengxi Group, right? Yeah, his family is rich, he's handsome, and he's the definition of a rich and handsome prince. I saw him talking with Teacher Li. Do you think they're dating? Very possible. They're talented and attractive. They look perfect together. I'm so jealous of Teacher Li. I wonder when I'll meet a rich second-generation heir like that." Following their gaze, I spotted Li Anqi and immediately walked toward her. The girls noticed me heading in that direction and looked annoyed, as if a beautiful scene was about to be ruined by an unwelcome intruder. One of them muttered, "What's this guy going over there for? He's just bothering Teacher Li." Another scoffed, "Seriously, why is the gap between Zhao Yang and young Master Chung so huge? Chung Yu is here recruiting employees today. Zhao Yang can't even guarantee he'll find a job. They're not even from the same world." Nearby, Chung Yu was still pestering Lianqi while her patience was visibly running out. Just then, she noticed me. Without hesitation, she abandoned Chung Yu and walked straight toward me. "Why are you only getting here now?" she scolded. "You're late for class. Late for the recruitment fair, too. Do you have any sense of time at all?" I replied, "Didn't I make it within the 15-minute limit?" Lianqi immediately said, "You were 30 seconds late." I laughed. "Seriously? You're counting 30 seconds too?" She glared at me. 30 seconds is enough time to submit your resume to another company. By the way, where's your resume?" My expression instantly changed. Looking at my empty hands, I suddenly realized I had forgotten the most important thing. My resume. Before Lianqi could explode again, I turned and ran while shouting, "I already prepared it before. I'm just going to print it out right now." Lianqi was so angry she nearly exploded, but all she could do was watch me run away. Behind me, the group of female students burst into laughter. Chung Yu walked back to Lianqi and said, "So, Teacher Li, the thing troubling you is actually one of your students." But Lianqi replied coldly, "Mr. Chung, I have other things to do. I don't have time to chat with you. Goodbye. With that, she walked away without another glance. Left standing there alone, Chung Yu's face darkened with embarrassment and anger. In his mind, all of this was my fault. Grinding his teeth, he muttered, "You brat, you dare ruin my plans? Then today I won't just stop you from getting hired. I'll destroy your reputation too." Sometime later, I returned to the recruitment fair carrying a stack of freshly printed resumes. Looking around, I saw 20 or 30 recruitment booths, each crowded with students. Unlike everyone else, who looked nervous and anxious about their futures, I felt completely relaxed. Considering my wealth, finding a job was the least of my concerns. In fact, buying some of these small companies wouldn't even be difficult. But to keep Leon Chi from scolding me every day, I still needed to secure a job as soon as possible. While I was casually strolling around, Zhang Yong suddenly approached me and sneered, "You seem pretty relaxed." I looked at him and replied, "What does that have to do with you?" He smirked contemptuously. "I'm just concerned about a classmate. If you keep acting like this, you're definitely not finding a job." At that moment, the same group of female students walked over as well. "That's right, Zhao Ying. We're all worried about you," one of them said mockingly. Another laughed. "If you fail to find a job and later we visit a restaurant only to see you serving us as a waiter, that'll be so awkward." "Forget awkward," another added. "That'll be embarrassing. For the honor of our class, you should try harder. Otherwise, when we have our reunion next year, I'm afraid you won't even dare show up." They sounded concerned on the surface, but every word was dripping with sarcasm and ridicule. I couldn't be bothered arguing with them. Walking straight past them, I simply said, "Move," Zhang Yong scoffed. "Still acting cool. Let's see if anyone actually hires you." Another laughed. "After the recruitment fair ends, let's go ask him how many offers he got. That'll be fun." "Good idea," they all agreed, continuing to mock me. Ignoring them completely, I blended into the crowd. As I wandered around, I suddenly heard a familiar voice. "Little miss, I think you'd be perfect for our company. Why not give it a try?" The voice sounded slightly lecherous. "Hey, don't leave. Stay and chat a little longer." Turning my head, I saw Zhou Chang, someone I had met several times before. A smile appeared on my face as I walked over. Seeing someone approach, Zhou Chang casually waved his hand and said, "Not interested? Then go somewhere else." I cleared my throat and said, "Boss Zhou, I don't think that's a very good way to recruit people." Zhou Chang instinctively replied, "How I do things is none of your damn," but the moment he saw my face, he abruptly swallowed the rest of his words. His eyes widened as he exclaimed in a low voice, "It's you!" I smiled and nodded. "That's right. It's me. I'm here to apply for a job." The moment those words left my mouth, Zhou Chang's heart sank. Then he immediately forced a smile and said, "My apologies." "Let's go," Zhou Chang said abruptly before turning around and leaving. The interviewers looked at each other in confusion, but they could only follow his orders and leave as well. I was left standing there completely baffled. I couldn't understand why Zhou Chang seemed so eager to avoid me. At that moment, I couldn't help thinking that maybe I still wasn't being low-key enough. After walking some distance away, Zhou Chang finally stopped and let out a long breath of relief. Just then, a man in his 30s walked up beside him and curiously asked, "Young Master Zhou, what happened back there?" Zhou Chang glanced at him and said, "Manager who? Your Huasheng group is recruiting here too?" The man nodded. Yes, and our chairman places great importance on this event. As the HR manager, I came personally to take a look." Zhou Chang laughed. "Even a small campus recruitment fair gets that much attention? No wonder Huasheng Group has become the leading company in our city." Manager Hu smiled before asking again, "But I saw you run away from a student just now. What exactly happened?" Zhou Chang awkwardly scratched his head and sighed. "It's a long story." Manager Hu chuckled. "What kind of person could scare you like that?" Zhou Chang lowered his voice and replied, "To be honest, I don't know exactly who he is, but he's the kind of rich second-generation heir who can casually pull out nearly 10 million yuan. Just imagine what level of person that must be." Manager Hu was stunned. "Really? He looked pretty ordinary to me. He didn't seem rich at all." Zhou Chang immediately replied, "What? Are you doubting my judgment?" Manager Hu shook his head. "Not at all. Rich young masters recognize their own kind better than anyone. I just find it strange." Zhou Chang nodded knowingly. "Among wealthy heirs, plenty of them have weird hobbies. Some even like pretending to be poor students so they can chase girls." Manager Hu laughed. "I have actually heard stories like that before. But which family is that kid from?" Zhou Chang shook his head. "I've met most of the rich heirs in our city at least once, but I've never heard of him before. All I know is that his name is Zhao Yang, and he's probably from the neighboring city." Hearing that, Manager Hu's eyes widened. "His surname is Zhao, and he's from the neighboring city?" He paused before suddenly saying, "Could he be the legendary illegitimate son of the chairman of Jiaoteng Group?" Even Zhou Chang couldn't help nodding. "Yeah, that's actually very possible." Manager Hu thought for a moment and then smiled. "If that's really the case, Then I need to seize this opportunity. Zhou Chang looked puzzled. What do you mean? Manager Hu explained, Young Master Zhou, you may not know this, but our group is currently preparing for a major project. We're hoping to form a powerful partnership with Zhao Teng Group. If I can use the chairman's illegitimate son to help facilitate that cooperation, it would be a huge achievement for me. Zhou Chang wasn't interested in business matters and shrugged. But we're only guessing. What if we're wrong? Manager Hu laughed. Even if we are wrong, he's still a rich heir, isn't he? Building a good relationship with someone like that can never hurt. Zhou Chang smiled. You really are sharp. Manager Hu grinned and said, in any case, thank you for the information. I need to handle this quickly before another company recruits him first. Zhou Chang waved his hand. Go ahead. As Manager Hu walked away, he carefully considered how to approach me. After all, if I really was an illegitimate son, it would be an extremely sensitive matter that needed to be handled delicately. Meanwhile, I knew absolutely nothing about all of this and continued searching for opportunities. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out, Isn't this Zhao? If you're looking for a job, why not come take a look at our company? I looked up and saw Cheng Yu waving at me. Honestly, I didn't want to deal with him at all, but out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Li Anqi watching me from not too far away. For some reason, a chill ran down my spine. I had already visited several companies without any success, so I figured I might as well put on a show. Fine, I said, handing over my resume. Here's my resume. In reality, I had absolutely no intention of joining Cheng Yu's company. At that moment, I secretly glanced toward Li Anqi and noticed that after seeing me submit my resume, she finally turned and walked away. I instantly felt relieved. Standing across from me, Cheng Yu pretended to read my resume. Then, without warning, he suddenly shouted at the top of his lungs, Zhao Yang, aren't you the student who behaved improperly at school? I heard you even stole money before. The moment those words left his mouth, everyone nearby turned to look at me. My expression darkened immediately. I've never stolen money, I said firmly. Don't slander me. A barely noticeable sneer flashed across Cheng Yu's face before he loudly replied, This isn't something I made up. I heard it from several people, and those people are your classmates. Surely they know your character better than anyone. Anger surged through me. So you just believe whatever people say? Is that how your company judges others? Cheng Yu crossed his arms and sneered. If you were really a good student, why would people spread rumors about you? There must be a reason. Anyway, Chengxi Group will never hire someone like you. As he spoke, he deliberately threw my resume onto the ground in front of everyone, but he still wasn't finished. Looking around at the other companies, he loudly announced, And let me offer everyone some friendly advice. Don't hire students like him, otherwise you might end up inviting unnecessary trouble. Many of the interviewers nodded in agreement. In an instant, I felt like I had truly become a thief in everyone's eyes. Surrounded by judgmental stares, I clenched my fists and shouted, I'll say it one more time. I have never stolen a single cent. Cheng Yu coldly replied, Who's going to believe you? Who's willing to testify for you? He was right. At that moment, nobody stepped forward to defend me. However, just when the situation seemed hopeless, a man in his 30s suddenly walked into the crowd. He bent down, picked up the resume Cheng Yu had thrown on the ground, and calmly said, I believe him. His voice wasn't loud, but it instantly silenced everyone. All eyes turned toward the badge hanging on his chest. It clearly displayed his identity, Hu Liang, Human Resources Manager of Huasheng Group. The entire venue fell silent. Cheng Yu frowned and said, Manager Hu, this has nothing to do with you. I suggest you stay out of it. Hu Liang calmly replied, We're here to recruit employees. Any student attending this fair could potentially become one of our staff members. How does that not concern me? Cheng Yu frowned even deeper. But he hasn't even applied to Huasheng Group. Hu Liang smiled slightly. Not yet. That doesn't mean he won't. Cheng Yu scoffed. He's a thief. Are you seriously willing to hire someone like that? It seems Huasheng Group's hiring standards aren't very impressive. Hu Liang immediately responded, That's exactly the problem. You call him a thief, but do you have any evidence? Based on nothing more than rumors, you're trying to brand a student as a criminal. Don't you think that's reckless? Cheng Yu gritted his teeth. I never said he definitely stole anything, but if people are talking about it, then it deserves suspicion. We should be cautious. Hu Liang nodded. There's some truth in that. But your mistake was spreading those accusations publicly without conducting any investigation. Do you realize how much damage a careless statement can cause a student? You could destroy someone's future. You could erase more than 10 years of hard work and turn it all into ashes. Cheng Yu looked completely unconcerned. If his efforts can be destroyed that easily, then maybe he simply didn't work hard enough. Hu Liang's expression turned cold. Of course you'd say that. You're the young master of Chengxi Group. You were born into wealth and privilege, with your future guaranteed from the start. It's easy for someone like you to look down on others and say they didn't work hard enough. But don't forget that without the employees struggling at the bottom, your family wouldn't have achieved what it has today. If you can't respect every applicant, one day you'll regret it. Then he raised my resume and continued. And another thing. A resume represents a student's summary of their life, education, and efforts. It carries dignity. You had no right to throw it on the ground. His words immediately resonated with many people nearby. Hearing that, I felt genuine respect for him. Chung Yu noticed the crowd beginning to agree with Hu Liang, and his expression darkened. Say whatever you want. Our company will never hire him. Hu Liang glanced at me and said, with that kind of attitude, I doubt he'd want to join your company anyway. I shook my head without hesitation. That's right. A company that doesn't know how to respect people isn't somewhere I'd work even if I were starving. Hu Liang immediately smiled. Then would you be interested in submitting your resume to Huasheng Group instead? I can't guarantee you'll be hired, but at least we can give each other a chance. The crowd gasped in surprise. I nodded. Of course I'm willing to try. Hu Liang laughed. Then come over to our booth and let's talk. I followed him toward the Huasheng Group recruitment area. Watching this happen, Chung Yu's face became darker than ever. Nearby, Zhang Yang and the group of female students were still watching. One girl scoffed, "That manager Hu is so annoying. Why is he sticking his nose into other people's business?" Another said, "Yeah, but why is he helping Zhao Yang? Do they know each other?" Zhang Yang immediately shook his head. "No way. Zhao Yang is just a poor guy. If he really knew Manager Hu, he would have applied directly to Huasheng Group from the start." Another girl nodded. "Even if he submits a resume, there's no way he gets accepted, right?" Zhang Yang smirked. "Definitely not. His grades and performance don't meet their standards at all." As they continued talking, they somehow regained their sense of superiority. Meanwhile, after reaching a quieter area, I sincerely said, "Manager Hu, thank you for what you did just now." Hu Liang smiled warmly. "It was nothing. No need to thank me. But I knew things weren't that simple. Even so, you offended Chung Yu because of me. Won't that cause trouble for you?" Hu Liang shook his head confidently. "I'm a manager at Huasheng Group, and our chairman trusts me very much. You don't need to worry about me." I nodded with relief. "That's good. But I'm still curious. Why did you help me?" Hu Liang smiled faintly. "Because my family was poor too. I climbed up from being a poor student myself. I was bullied by rich heirs when I was younger, and back then, nobody stood up for me. I understand exactly how you feel. So when I saw what was happening today, there was no way I could ignore it." Hearing that, I felt genuine admiration. I see. People like you are rare these days. Deep down, Hu Liang felt a little guilty because that wasn't his true reason, but he didn't show it. Instead, he suddenly put on a serious face and said, "Still, business is business. Helping you doesn't mean Huasheng Group will hire you. Everything must go through the proper process." I nodded. "I understand." Together, we returned to the Huasheng Group booth, which was still packed with applicants. Hu Liang patted my shoulder and said, "Go line up. I have other things to handle. Do your best. Hopefully, you'll have a chance to join our company." Then he turned and left. After waiting in line for quite some time, I finally sat down in front of an interviewer. The interviewer asked me several questions before nodding. "All right, I have a general understanding of your situation now. Go back and wait for our decision." I stood up and replied, "Thank you." Not long after I left, Hu Liang found that interviewer and quietly instructed him, "Keep Zhao Yang's resume safe. Put him on the pending list." The interviewer looked confused and said, "But that kid seemed completely ordinary. He doesn't meet our requirements at all." "That's not something I get to decide," Hu Liang replied. After leaving the Huasheng Group booth, I found a quiet corner and called Li Chung. "Manager Li, how are things on your side?" He immediately replied, "Everything's been taken care of." Hearing that, I nodded and said, "Good. I have a company that needs an investment. I want you to handle it." Li Cheng answered without hesitation, "No problem, Mr. Zhao. Just tell me what you need, and I'll make sure it gets done." After that, I explained Lianqi's situation and her educational startup in detail, asking him to move as quickly as possible. Once the call ended, I finally let out a relieved sigh. At least that problem was solved. Not long afterward, while I was walking around campus, Lianqi's familiar voice rang out again. "Zhao Yang, why are you wandering around here? Have you even talked to all those companies yet?" I turned around helplessly and replied, "Most of them." Her brows immediately furrowed. "You said most. With your grades, if you don't give it everything you've got, how can you possibly get a chance?" I sighed and said, all right, I understand." She crossed her arms and snapped, "If you understand, then hurry up. You should apply to every single company here. If you can't find a job, then just wait and see." Deep down, I thought, are you planning to murder your future husband or something? Of course, there was no way I would dare say that out loud. Just as I was about to slip away, her phone suddenly rang. She looked at the unfamiliar number with a slight frown, but answered anyway. "Hello?" A voice came from the other side. "Hello, is this Miss Li Enchi?" "Yes, it is. I heard you're planning to establish an educational institution and are currently looking for investment funding." Lianqi's eyes instantly lit up. "That's right. May I ask who you are?" The caller replied, "I'm from Dongshin Investment Company. We're interested in investing in educational startups. If you're interested, perhaps we can arrange a meeting." Excitement flashed across her face. "Of course. How about tonight at 8 o'clock at Jinyan Restaurant? No problem, we'll discuss everything there. After a few more polite exchanges, the call ended. Almost immediately, the tension on her face eased. Standing beside her, I heard the restaurant name and instantly knew the caller had been Li Cheng. Seeing the relief in her eyes made me feel strangely satisfied. But before I could enjoy the moment, Li Anqi glared at me again. Why are you still standing there? The recruitment fair is almost over. Hurry up and keep applying. I cursed inwardly, but obediently grabbed my resumes and continued pretending to search for jobs. By the time the recruitment fair finally ended in the evening, I felt completely liberated. As I walked out of the school gate, I ran into Zhang Yang and several classmates again. This time, Xu Lingling was with them as well. She smiled smugly and asked, "So, Zhao Yang, how did your job hunting go today?" I frowned. It's not like companies give results instantly. If you ask me, who am I supposed to ask? Xu Lingling pretended to be surprised. Oh, so you don't know right away? I wouldn't know. I never had to apply anywhere. One of the girls beside her said enviously, Lingling is lucky. As soon as she graduates, she can work at her cousin's real estate company. Xu Lingling proudly lifted her chin. Of course, but don't worry. Once I establish myself there, maybe I can help some of you get in too. The girls immediately became excited. One of them laughed and asked, Then Zhang Yang doesn't need to worry about work either, right? Jing Yang smirked. Naturally. My dad already arranged everything for me. It's not like certain people who spent the whole day looking for work and still might not get hired anywhere. Pretty pathetic if you ask me. Xu Lingling nodded. That's the difference between people. Another girl added sarcastically, well, to be fair, Zhao Yang was invited over by manager Hu from Huasheng Group. Maybe he has connections and is already guaranteed a position. I immediately shook my head. Don't misunderstand. I have no relationship with manager Hu at all. I applied there through the normal process. There's no shortcut involved. Zhang Yang laughed. So even though he helped you earlier, he never intended to hire you. That means you got excited for nothing. Xu Lingling covered her mouth dramatically. That's so tragic. Everyone burst into laughter. I shook my head and prepared to leave, but Xu Lingling suddenly called out, Wait a second, my cousin wants to see you. I stopped and asked, Wu Haoshan, what does he want with me? She shrugged. How should I know? He just told me to make sure you stayed here. I was about to refuse when a white Audi suddenly pulled up nearby. Wu Haoshan stepped out of the car. The girls immediately started admiring it. Wow, your cousin's car is so cool. Xu Lingling smiled proudly. With his wealth, driving this is already considered low-key. Another girl laughed. Compared to your father's Rolls-Royce Phantom, it's still several levels lower. Every time her father's luxury car was mentioned, Xu Lingling looked incredibly pleased with herself. I couldn't help smiling helplessly. Seeing that, she glared at me. What are you laughing at? My dad's car is something you couldn't even afford a tire for after working your entire life. Wu Haoshan walked over and greeted everyone except me. It was obvious he was deliberately ignoring my existence. I coughed lightly and said, Didn't you say you wanted something from me? Only then did he pretend to notice me. Oh, sorry. You're not very noticeable, so I didn't even see you. He smiled before continuing. I actually came here for something important. As he spoke, he pulled a thin card from his pocket and held it out toward me. It didn't look like a business card. It seemed more like a special invitation. I didn't take it immediately and asked, What's this? Wu Haoshan explained, It's an invitation to a banquet. Last time you helped us solve a problem, so we wanted to thank you by inviting you. I frowned. What kind of banquet? He waved his hand casually. Nothing special, just a gathering with lots of good food. It's free, so why not come enjoy a nice meal? After hesitating for a moment, I accepted the card. Honestly, I only took it because I wanted him to stop bothering me. Wu Haoshan smiled. That's more like it. Then we'll see you tomorrow night. The time and location are written on the card. I shrugged. I'll see. I might not even be free tomorrow. All right then. With that, I finally managed to leave. Not long after driving away from school, I received another call, this time from Li Cheng. Mr. Zhao, do you have time later? There are still some documents that require your signature. Sure, I was planning to come by anyway. The truth was, I also intended to visit Jinyan Restaurant. Even though I trusted Li Cheng, I still wanted to personally witness Li Anqi successfully securing her investment before I could truly relax. At 7:30 that evening, I arrived at the restaurant. Mr. Zhao, you're here. Please come in. Li Cheng had just walked outside and immediately greeted me. The restaurant recently added several new dishes. Since you haven't eaten yet, we can discuss company matters over dinner. I shook my head. Has Li Anqi arrived yet? Not yet. Good. Arrange a private room as close as possible to where you'll be meeting her. And remember, don't let her know I'm here. At exactly 8 o'clock, Li Anqi arrived as scheduled and entered the private room next to mine. Through the thin wall separating us, I could hear everything clearly. Manager Li, these are my company's documents. Please take a look. Li Cheng accepted the paperwork and briefly examined the numbers. Miss Li, according to your proposal, you're seeking an investment of 700,000 yuan. Nervously, she nodded. Yes. Before coming here, she had already prepared herself mentally. Even if she only secured 500,000, it would still solve her immediate problems. After a brief silence, she carefully asked, Manager Li, What do you think? Suddenly, Li Cheng shook his head. Her heart instantly sank. I know my company is still new. If you think 700,000 is too much, perhaps we can lower it a little. Before she could finish, Li Cheng interrupted her. No, it's too little. Li Anqi froze. What? Li Cheng smiled. We're willing to invest 2 million yuan. For a moment, she thought she had heard wrong. 2 million? That's right. 700,000 is only enough to solve your short-term problems. It's far too little. The investment amount had increased by more than double. Naturally, Li Anqi was thrilled, but the surprise was so overwhelming that she could hardly believe it. After calming down slightly, she cautiously asked, then what about profit sharing and company equity? What requirements does your company have? Li Cheng immediately saw through her concerns and laughed. Miss Li, you're overthinking things. We're not interested in taking equity. We're investors, and investors simply want returns. The profit sharing arrangement can remain exactly as stated in your proposal. We might extend the duration slightly, but if you're worried, we can clearly state everything in the contract. Hearing that, Li Anqi finally relaxed completely. No, thank you so much, Manager Li. If you have no further questions, let's sign the contract now. I'll have our finance department transfer the money tomorrow. Of course, no problem. Sitting next door, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. Once the contract was signed, Li Anqi confidently said, Manager Li, don't worry. Our company definitely won't let you lose money. Li Cheng quickly waved his hands. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm only an employee. I'm not the owner. Li Anqi blinked in surprise. You're not? No, it was our boss who took an interest in your company and instructed me to contact you. The increased investment was also entirely his decision. Oh, I see. She hesitated before asking, then would it be possible to contact your boss? I'd really like to thank him personally. Li Cheng smiled. There's no need. Our boss may only be in his early 20s, but he's already accomplished quite a lot. However, he's always preferred to keep a low profile. Hearing that, Li Anqi looked genuinely surprised. So young? She couldn't help admiring him a little. In a society as impatient and restless as this one, young people who achieved success yet remained humble were incredibly rare. Listening from next door, I couldn't help smiling. Thankfully, she hadn't figured anything out. Li Cheng continued, Don't let his age fool you. His vision and generosity far exceed ordinary people. Actually, he's quite similar to Zhao Yang, both in age and personality. Similar to Zhao Yang? Li Anqi frowned slightly. Li Cheng laughed. Well, they're about the same age. These days, it really is the younger generation's world. Li Anqi simply smiled helplessly. After she eventually left, I remained hidden until I was sure she was gone. Only then did I step out. Li Cheng immediately approached me and asked, Mr. Zhao, everything has been handled. Are you satisfied? I nodded. Good enough. Don't forget to transfer the money tomorrow. From now on, you'll be fully responsible for managing her investment. Try your best to accommodate her requests. Li Cheng nodded seriously. Understood, Mr. Zhao. With Li Anqi's problems finally resolved, I no longer had any reason to stay at the restaurant. I drove straight home. The moment I opened the door, I saw Li Anqi sitting on the sofa with an intimidating expression. My heart skipped a beat. I'm back. Breaking the silence only made things worse. She coldly glanced at me and asked, How did the recruitment fair go today? Relieved that she was talking about jobs rather than the investment, I quickly replied, Pretty well. I handed out all my resumes. Now I'm just waiting for responses. Pretty well? Suddenly she stood up and slammed a stack of resumes onto the coffee table. This is what you mean by all your resumes? I nearly jumped in shock. Only then did I remember that although I had applied to many companies, I had completely forgotten where I left the remaining resumes. I applied to more than 10 companies, I explained weakly. A lot of booths packed up early. More than 10? Li Anqi's anger instantly flared. Do you know how difficult it is for university students to find jobs these days? If you had arrived on time, would you have missed those opportunities? The more she spoke, the angrier she became. If another teacher hadn't picked up your resumes and returned them to me, I wouldn't even know how careless you were being. Standing by the door, I quietly muttered, Who even needs that little bit of money anyway? Unfortunately, she heard me. What did you just say? My heart instantly froze. Zhao Yang, let me tell you something. When graduation comes, if you still don't have a job, don't expect a single cent from me. I instinctively replied, I wasn't asking you for money. What did you say? Her voice rose again. Realizing the danger, I immediately surrendered. Nothing. I mean, I'll definitely find a job. Several companies seemed interested in me today. I even submitted my resume to Huasheng Group. I have Manager Hu's business card too. As proof, I quickly handed over Hu Liang's card. She glanced at it before saying, Don't think that submitting a resume means they'll hire you. Graduation is almost here. Start taking this seriously. I know. Maybe I'll even get into Huasheng. You? Li Anqi frowned. Stop daydreaming and focus on reality. Then she suddenly narrowed her eyes. By the way, where did you go after the recruitment fair? Why did you come home so late? My heart skipped again. I was working at the restaurant. Manager Lee said the kitchen was short-handed, so I helped out for a while. The moment I said that, I knew I had made a mistake. The little bit of anger that had faded immediately returned. The recruitment fair is one of the most important events for your future, and you were late. Yet somehow you can work overtime at a restaurant? It was only temporary. Temporary? Zhao Yang, you're becoming more and more disappointing. Can't you become someone useful? There are people your age who already own companies. Look at yourself. You have nothing, and you still don't know how to work hard. She stopped midway through her sentence, swallowed the rest of her words, glared at me fiercely, and stormed into her room. I could only sigh helplessly. The moment I collapsed onto the sofa, a message arrived from Li Cheng. Mr. Zhao, there's a banquet tomorrow. The organizer invited the head of our company. Will you be available? I was about to reply and tell him to attend on my behalf when another message arrived. It seems Miss Li Anqi's startup is also on the guest list. The moment I read that, a feeling washed over me. If Li Anqi attended, Cheng Yu would probably be there too. Immediately, I deleted the message I had been typing and replied, check whether Cheng Yu is on the guest list. A short while later, Li Cheng responded, the Cheng family is indeed attending. I knew it. Cheng Yu would definitely try something again. Send me the address. And remember, I want to keep a low profile. The banquet was scheduled for 7 o'clock the following evening. However, Li Anqi left the house much earlier that afternoon. Since I still had plenty of time, I drove to a nearby shopping mall to buy a suitable outfit. After entering a menswear store, I casually began looking through several suits. That was when an annoying voice suddenly rang out behind me. Well, if it isn't Zhao Yang, what a coincidence. Turning around, I saw Zhang Yong and Xu Ling. I simply glanced at them before continuing to browse. Just then, a salesperson approached with a light gray suit and politely asked, Sir, what do you think of this one? Before I could answer, Xu Ling burst out laughing. Buying a suit? Don't tell me you're actually planning to attend my cousin's banquet tonight. Hearing that, I suddenly remembered the invitation in my pocket. Why? Is there a problem with that? Xu Ling smirked. Of course not. I'm actually impressed. You're really willing to spend money on clothes. I just hope you don't dress yourself up only to get thrown out like a stray dog. She crossed her arms and added mockingly, after all, no matter what clothes you wear, that poor person smell can't be covered up. I looked at her calmly and smiled. Really? I wouldn't be so sure about that. There's only one left, and this gentleman saw it first, the salesperson said apologetically. Zhang Yong immediately sneered and asked, how much is that suit? The salesperson replied, after the discount, it's 4,600 won. Zhang Yong smirked and said, then I suggest you sell it to me. There's no guarantee he even has that much money in his pocket, so don't waste your time. Xu Ling joined in with a fake smile. Don't say that. Zhao Yang has a job now, doesn't he? Since he's working at a restaurant, he should be able to afford one suit, right? Even though she sounded like she was defending me, every word was dripping with contempt. Then she added, but honestly, Zhao Yang, I think you should forget about this suit. With a waiter's temperament, even the best clothes would be wasted on you. Zhang Yong suddenly slapped his forehead and laughed. Oh, right. I almost forgot you work in a restaurant now. The salesperson looked increasingly uncomfortable and cautiously said, Sir, perhaps you'd like to look at some other options? Our store policy is to prioritize customers who arrived first. I waved my hand casually. It's fine. Let him have this suit. Then I glanced at the price tag and added, to be honest, I'm not very satisfied with the price. The moment I said that, everyone froze. Not satisfied? Zhang Yong burst out laughing. Zhao Yang, have 2 days of waiting tables turned you stupid? Even the salesperson looked confused. Xu Ling folded her arms and said mockingly, all right then, Zhao Yang, tell us, how expensive a suit do you want? Let us broaden our horizons. I calmly asked the salesperson, do you have anything over 50,000? Before the salesperson could answer, Zhang Yong and Xu Ling laughed even harder. Finally, the salesperson explained, sorry, sir, the most expensive suit in our store is only 12,000 yuan. Hearing that, she suddenly understood why I had spoken so confidently. Xu Ling nearly choked, trying not to laugh. What, you think 12,000 yuan is cheap? I looked at her calmly and asked, is 12,000 yuan expensive? She immediately replied, of course not. I nodded. Exactly. Compared to 4,600 yuan, it's only a little more expensive. The moment I said that, Xu Ling's face turned red. Who said we think it's expensive? I shrugged. Then why are you buying a 4,600 yuan suit? If it were me, I'd obviously buy the better one. Zhang Yong instantly became annoyed. Then buy it! Anyone can brag. I chuckled. So you admit you were only bragging too? Here I thought you two were actually capable of something. Then I turned toward the salesperson and said, please pack up the most expensive suit, I'll take it. Looking back at Xu Ling, I added with a faint smile, apparently they can't afford it. Those words immediately ignited her temper. Pack me one too, she snapped. It's only 12,000 yuan. Zhang Yong froze and immediately tugged at her sleeve, but she slapped his hand away. What are you standing there for? Buy it! The salesperson quickly wrapped up the suit and brought it over. Miss, please proceed to the register. Shu Lingling proudly looked at Jiang Yong. Go pay. Jiang Yong's expression immediately turned awkward. Lingling, what? She asked impatiently. After hesitating for a long time, he finally whispered, I don't have enough money on my card. Shu Lingling's face instantly changed. Furious, she glared at him. But things had already gone too far to back down now. Gritting her teeth, she quietly pulled out a bank card and slipped it into his hand. The password is my birthday. Don't forget to pay me back. Only then did Jiang Yong reluctantly follow the salesperson to the register. Shu Lingling immediately turned back to me with a mocking smile. Well, didn't you say you were buying one too? The salesperson has been waiting forever. Don't tell me you're suddenly broke now. Were you just wasting everyone's time? Jiang Yong returned and laughed. Yeah, earlier you were talking about 50,000 yuan suits. Now you can't even afford a cheaper one. I simply smiled and replied, why would I buy it now? Because you can't afford it, Shu Lingling scoffed. At that moment, the salesperson suddenly spoke up. Actually, there's something you should know. We only had one of these suits in stock. Everyone froze. What? Shu Lingling and Jiang Yong shouted at the same time. Looking at their stunned faces, I couldn't help smiling. The truth was, the moment I entered the store, I had already noticed that 12,000 yuan suit sitting beside a sign that clearly read, only one available. At some point, I had accidentally knocked the sign over. I never expected it would end up helping me. What I definitely hadn't expected was for Shu Lingling and Jiang Yong to fall for it so easily without even checking the suit properly. Watching their ugly expressions, I simply turned around and walked out of the store. Their faces looked absolutely terrible. After leaving, I entered another boutique and picked out a suit I genuinely liked. People always said clothes make the man, and now I understood why. I usually wore loose sportswear, but the moment I put on a properly tailored suit, my entire aura seemed to change. Once I was satisfied with my appearance, I drove straight toward the hotel hosting the banquet. To avoid attracting attention, I parked some distance away and walked the rest of the way. However, the moment I reached the entrance, security stopped me. Sir, please show your invitation. I paused for a moment before saying, my name is Zhao Yang. My name should be on the guest list. I don't have the invitation with me right now. Can I go in first? The guard shook his head. Sorry, sir. We don't have a guest list here. Left with no choice, I started searching for Li Cheng. Unfortunately, I couldn't find him anywhere. I called him several times, but his phone was unreachable. Just then, Wu Haoxin arrived. At first, he didn't recognize me. But as he got closer, his expression changed. Well, isn't this Zhao Yang? He said with a mocking smile. Or should I say, young Master Zhao? Even though he used a respectful title, the contempt in his voice was obvious. I glanced at him and said nothing. Looking at the guards, he asked loudly, what's going on? Why aren't you letting young Master Zhao inside? One of the guards explained, this gentleman doesn't have an invitation. A sly smile immediately appeared on Wu Haoxin's face. Back when he invited me, he had only told me the location and intentionally never gave me the actual invitation. Ah, so that's the problem, he said. Young Master Zhao, I understand. You wanted to come experience upper-class society. But if you've never attended events like this before, you should know that without an invitation, nobody gets in. I frowned. Who said I don't have one? I just didn't bring it. Wu Haoxin burst out laughing. Really? Then where is it? At home? Do you need me to drive you back to get it? Just then, another car arrived. The door opened and Li Anqi stepped out wearing a stunning black evening gown. Even I was momentarily stunned. She looked incredible. At the same time, she spotted me and frowned. Why are you here? She asked coldly. I came with Manager Li, I explained. He just hasn't arrived yet. Before Li Anqi could respond, Wu Haoxin immediately interrupted. Young Master Zhao really tells lies effortlessly. I'm the one responsible for organizing this banquet, and I don't remember inviting any Manager Li. Li Anqi ignored him and looked at me. Manager Li? She glanced around but didn't see Li Cheng. Why would he bring you here? Before I could answer, Shu Lingling suddenly walked over. Teacher Li, Zhao Yang is lying. Jiang Yong immediately added, exactly. There's no Manager Li. Zhao Yang overheard my cousin talking about this banquet and probably wanted to sneak in to see what upper-class society looks like. Their accusations immediately attracted attention. So he really tried to sneak into the banquet? That's so embarrassing. Imagine getting exposed in front of everyone. The whispers spread rapidly. Li Anqi's expression became even colder. Zhao Yang, what exactly is going on? I sighed helplessly. I'm telling the truth. Manager Li really invited me. But Shu Lingling immediately pulled out her phone. Teacher Li, look at this. We ran into him this afternoon while he was shopping. She showed Li Anqi a video. After watching it, Li Anqi's face turned ice cold. So you wanted to attend this banquet that badly? She asked angrily. You've got it all wrong, I quickly said. That video doesn't show what really happened. Enough, she snapped. The video can't lie. Are you saying that isn't you? I clenched my teeth. What I said is real, but there's a reason behind it. What possible reason could justify this? She demanded. It's just a banquet. Are you really this obsessed with showing off? This is embarrassing. The more she spoke, the angrier she became. How could I have a student like you? Seeing her misunderstanding deepen made me feel terrible. Please, just listen. But she didn't give me the chance. Pulling out her invitation, she threw it toward me. Fine. Since you want to attend so badly, take my ticket. If you still have any dignity left, then stay here. With that, she turned around and drove away. I immediately chased after her, but within seconds, her car disappeared from sight. Watching her leave, my heart sank. Zhu Lingling crossed her arms and sneered. You actually managed to anger your teacher into leaving. Wu Haoxian laughed. Look at yourself. You really thought you belonged at an event like this. Just as they were preparing to enter the banquet hall, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit hurried outside. It was Song Yucheng, the owner of one of the city's most famous financial companies and the host of the banquet. Wu Haotian immediately ran over. President Song, why did you come outside? Song Yucheng replied, I heard there was some kind of disturbance. I came to make sure nothing affects my honored guests. Wu Haoxian quickly smiled. Nothing serious. Just someone trying to sneak into the banquet. I've already told security to remove him. Song Yucheng didn't seem interested in talking to him and walked directly toward the entrance. By the time he arrived, the crowd had already dispersed. Only I remained there waiting for Li Cheng. Looking at the guards, Song Yucheng asked, What happened? One guard replied, This gentleman says he's on the guest list but doesn't have his invitation. He's waiting for someone to bring it. Song Yucheng finally looked at me. Which company are you from? I paused. Honestly, I couldn't even remember the name of my investment company. I forgot the company name, I admitted. My name is Zhao Yang. I really was invited. One of the guards nearly laughed. But Song Yucheng didn't laugh at all. Instead, his expression suddenly froze. Did you say, Zhao Yang, young Master Zhao? Before I could answer, a familiar voice called out, Mr. Zhao! Li Cheng had finally arrived. His car had broken down on the way and his phone had died, which was why he had been unreachable. Seeing him, Song Yucheng's face instantly lit up. Li Cheng quickly introduced us. Mr. Zhao, this is President Song, the host of tonight's banquet. He's also the one who invited us. Song Yucheng immediately apologized. Young Master Zhao, I'm terribly sorry. Please come inside. I'll personally investigate what happened and give you an explanation. Even though he was being respectful, I was still in a terrible mood because of everything that had happened with Li Anqi. Can I go in now? I asked coldly. Song Yucheng instantly broke into a cold sweat and hurriedly stepped aside. Of course, please. Li Cheng followed me into the banquet hall. The moment we entered, someone recognized him. Manager Li, you're here too? I immediately signaled for him to go socialize while I stayed by myself. Looking around the hall, I quickly spotted Wu Haoxian, Xu Lingling, and Zhang Yang moving from guest to guest. Suddenly, Wu Haoxian noticed me. His expression darkened. How did you get inside? I calmly grabbed a piece of dessert and replied, I walked in. I'm asking who let you in. I smiled. Didn't security already check invitations? Are you security now? His brows furrowed. I'm the organizer of this banquet on President Song's behalf. Of course I have the authority to check your invitation. I shrugged. I don't have one. Then get out, he snapped. This is a high-end banquet, not a place for freeloaders. Our argument quickly attracted attention. Isn't that the guy from outside? He actually got in? What a joke. But I ignored all of them. Looking at Wu Haoxian, I calmly said, You don't have the authority to kick me out. He laughed arrogantly. I'm in charge of this banquet. Are you saying I'm not qualified? I pretended to look surprised. You're in charge? Before he could enjoy the attention, I added, So what? You still don't have the authority. In fact, whether you get to stay here tonight isn't even guaranteed. The entire room burst into laughter. Wu Haoxian pointed at me and sneered. That's the funniest joke I've heard all year. What? Are you saying you can throw me out? I smiled faintly. You never know. Just then, Li Cheng finally noticed the commotion and hurried over. What's going on here? Wu Haoxian immediately recognized him. Manager Li, perfect timing. There's someone here claiming you brought him in. He even said you had his invitation. Is that true? He casually draped an arm over Li Cheng's shoulder as if they were close friends. But within seconds, Li Cheng stepped away from him. The invitation isn't with me, he said. Hearing that, Wu Haoxian instantly became smug again. See? Zhao Yang, are you finally done embarrassing yourself? But before he could finish celebrating, Li Cheng calmly continued. However, I did bring him here. Wu Haoxian froze. What? Zhao Yang is my friend, Li Cheng said coldly. And what his status is certainly isn't for you to decide. Wu Haoxian's expression darkened. Maybe I'm insignificant, but aren't you worried about offending President Song? At that exact moment, another voice rang out. What's all this noise? Song Yucheng had arrived. Wu Haoxian immediately ran over. President Song, I'm sorry. Due to my negligence, a troublemaker got into the banquet. I was trying to deal with him, but Manager Li stopped me. Then he pointed directly at me. That's the guy. He claimed he was invited. Song Yucheng turned to look. The moment he realized the person being accused was me, his face stiffened. Wu Haoxian thought Song Yucheng was furious at me. But before his smug smile could fully form, he suddenly noticed that the anger in Song Yucheng's eyes was directed at him. "President Song, don't worry, I'll throw him out right now." Before he could finish, Song Yucheng grabbed him and slapped him across the face. The loud crack echoed through the entire banquet hall. Instantly, everything went silent. "Do you have any idea how important this banquet is?" Song Yucheng roared. "If your father hadn't begged me to mentor you, do you think I would have tolerated someone as useless as you?" Only then did I finally understand. The invitation issue at the entrance had been entirely Wu Haoshen's fault. Clutching his face, he stammered, "President Song, what are you doing? He's the one causing trouble." I calmly said, "This isn't your place to speak." Furious, Wu Haoshen shouted, "Security!" But before he could continue, Song Yucheng barked, "Throw Wu Haoshen out. Effective immediately. All cooperation between the Song and Wu families is cancelled. And from now on, he is forbidden from entering Song Group properties." Everyone was stunned. No matter how much Wu Haoshen begged, security dragged him out. The crowd immediately began whispering. Xu Lingling and Zhang Yang looked terrified. "What's happening? Wasn't the partnership already guaranteed? Maybe Wu Haoshen messed something up. After dealing with him, President Song will probably throw out that poor kid too." But then something happened that shocked everyone. Song Yaocheng walked directly toward me. Xu Lingling and Zhang Yang instantly looked excited, expecting another scene. Instead, Song Yucheng stopped in front of me and respectfully bowed. "Mr. Zhao, I sincerely apologize for disturbing your evening." The entire banquet hall froze. Everyone stared at me in disbelief. I couldn't help frowning. I always preferred staying low-key, but after this that seemed impossible. Li Cheng quickly walked over and whispered, "Mr. Zhao hates unnecessary attention." Song Yucheng immediately understood. Without missing a beat, he grabbed my hand and loudly said, "Little uncle, how have you been recently?" Then he turned toward the crowd and explained, "This is a distant relative of mine. He may be young, but his seniority in the family is very high." It took me a second to understand what he was doing. Somehow I had suddenly acquired a middle-aged nephew. I could only laugh helplessly and say, "I've been fine, you should go greet your guests." The crowd finally relaxed. Thinking I was merely Song Yucheng's relative, they no longer found the situation strange. Xu Lingling and Zhang Yang, however, looked absolutely miserable. Neither dared stay any longer, and they quickly slipped away. Soon, countless people approached me after learning I was supposedly related to Song Yucheng. I hated that kind of attention, so I let Li Cheng handle most of it. Honestly, I was starting to regret attending at all. Seeing my discomfort, Song Yucheng quietly came over and said, "Mr. Zhao, I'm truly sorry about what happened." I shook my head. "I understand why you did it. As for the cooperation project, Manager Li already explained most of it to me, but I'm really not in the mood to discuss business tonight. Let's talk another day." Song Yucheng was smart enough to understand. Pushing too hard would only make me dislike him, so he personally escorted me outside. As he watched me drive away, he let out a long sigh. Meanwhile, Wu Haoqian sat in his car, his face twisted with resentment. In his mind, everything that had happened was my fault. Clenching his fists, he swore he wouldn't let this go. After leaving the banquet, I returned home. To be honest, I was nervous. Li Anqi's misunderstanding had only gotten worse, and I had no idea how angry she would be. But when I opened the door, the house was completely dark. She wasn't home. She hadn't attended the banquet, and she hadn't returned here either. Where could she have gone? After thinking for a moment, I turned around and left again. Driving toward the business district, I soon arrived outside an office building. Sure enough, Lianqi's car was parked downstairs. This was where her company was located. I had no intention of disturbing her. I only wanted to wait nearby and quietly make sure she got home safely. But after only a few minutes, another car pulled up, a Mercedes. The person who stepped out immediately caught my attention. Cheng Yu. What was he doing here? Before he could even reach the entrance, Li Anqi walked out of the building. The moment she saw him, her brows knitted together. "Do you need something?" she asked. Cheng Yu smiled. "Nothing important. I was passing by and noticed your office lights were still on. I figured you were working late and wanted to check on you." Her expression became even colder. "I have things to do. I'm leaving." She tried to walk toward her car, but Cheng Yu quickly blocked her path. "Anqi, I heard you secured your investment. I'm genuinely happy for you. Let me take you to dinner and celebrate." "No need. I still have work to do," she replied in Pal. The moment Cheng Yu saw how Li Anqi treated me, a wave of excitement flashed through his heart. Smiling smugly, he said, "Zhao Yang, aren't you working as a waiter at Jinyan restaurant now? Don't they provide dinner there?" I didn't even glance at him. Instead, I continued talking to Li Anqi as if he didn't exist. "Come on. Let's go together." Li Anqi shot me a cold look, opened the car door, and got inside. "Go where? Stop standing around and get in the car." Hearing that, I obediently climbed into the passenger seat. Moments later, we drove away together. Cheng Yu stood there dumbfounded. Only after our car disappeared did he realize what had happened. He had been the one who came looking for Li Anqi first, yet somehow she had left with me instead. The entire ride home was silent. The atmosphere inside the car felt colder than an ice cellar. When we finally got back, Li Anqi sat down heavily on the sofa. The anger burning in her eyes was impossible to miss. I scratched my head awkwardly and said, you probably haven't eaten either. I can cook some noodles. Before I could move, she exploded. Is eating the only thing you know how to do? Her shout startled me. Why are you so hopeless? Why did you have to go to that banquet? Did you really need to embarrass yourself completely before you'd be satisfied? Every time it seemed like Li Anqi was beginning to think better of me, something happened that sent her opinion crashing back down. I tried to explain. Listen, that banquet. Explain what? She interrupted with a cold laugh. Are you going to tell me it was important, that you wanted to get in so you could create opportunities for yourself? Her eyes were filled with disappointment. Zhao Yang, is this what you call having ambition? Success comes from hard work, not shameless shortcuts. I froze. Deep down, I knew that no matter what I said, she wouldn't believe me. So I simply stood there in silence. Unfortunately, my silence only made her angrier. What? Nothing to say now? She snapped. If you keep going like this, your whole life will be ruined. Other people become successful in their 20s, but look at you. Are you really planning to spend your life at the bottom of society? Hearing that, a fire finally ignited inside me. What exactly do you want me to say? I shot back. That I'm worse than everyone else? I'll say it again. I was invited to that banquet. I wasn't sneaking in. Seeing me still refusing to admit fault, Li Anqi shouted even louder. You still don't understand where you went wrong. Why are you so useless? Some people in their early 20s can already manage entire investment companies. But you get thrown out of banquets. Can't you see the difference? Then came the words that hit me the hardest. How can there be such a useless man? I clenched my fists. Useless. So that investment company owner is useful? Li Anqi immediately glared back. Yes, at least he knows how to work hard and improve himself. Compared to him, She paused before shaking her head. Actually, I shouldn't compare you two at all. There's no comparison. One is in the sky and the other is underground. With that, she stormed into her room and slammed the door shut. I collapsed onto the sofa, feeling both wronged and frustrated. How much could a woman dislike her husband before she started comparing him to another man? The funniest part was that the man she kept praising was actually me. Yet somehow it still hurt, because in her mind, they were two completely different people. Every time she mentioned the investment company owner, her voice was full of admiration. Every time she mentioned Zhao Yang, it was full of disappointment. I stared at the ceiling for a long time. Then a thought suddenly crossed my mind. I needed to know what Li Anqi truly thought. After thinking about it all night, I came up with a plan. Since I couldn't reveal my real identity, I would approach her as the investment company owner. Of course, meeting in person was impossible. The only option was contacting her online. The problem was that my current phone was an old Nokia. It couldn't even run social apps properly, which meant there was only one solution. I needed a new phone. Early the next morning, I headed straight to a phone store. The moment I walked inside, salespeople swarmed me. Sir, our newest fruit phone is currently 20% off. Sir, this model has an 8-megapixel camera and automatic zoom. It's very popular with young people. Wanting to save time, I walked directly to the nearest counter and pointed at a phone. Let me see that one. The salesperson smiled brightly. Excellent choice, sir. This is our newest limited edition model. It originally costs 10,999 yuan, but it's currently discounted to 8,899. It also supports multiple app instances, so you can log into several WeChat accounts at the same time. The moment I heard that feature, I was sold. Multiple WeChat accounts would make my plan much easier. Perfect. I'll take it. While I was paying and waiting for the phone to be packaged, a sweet, coquettish voice suddenly came from nearby. Brother Hu, hurry up. This limited edition phone is brand new. If I can't get one, I'm going to be upset. A thick-necked man wearing a giant gold chain walked over with a beautiful woman dressed in revealing clothes hanging from his arm. The salesperson immediately greeted her. Miss Wu, welcome back. Which phone caught your eye this time? The woman pointed directly at the phone being packaged for me. That one. The newest model. Before anyone could react, she snatched the phone from the salesperson's hands. Smiling, she said, You knew I was coming, so you packed it for me in advance. Great. No need to wrap it. I'll use it right now. The salesperson immediately panicked. Miss Wu, there's been a misunderstanding. This phone belongs to that gentleman. She pointed toward me. The woman glanced over casually. Then just get him another one. Clearly, she had no intention of giving it back. The salesperson looked at me helplessly. Seeing how uncomfortable she was, I waved my hand. It's fine. It's only a phone. Just get me another one. Relieved, the salesperson bent down to search beneath the counter. Only then did the woman really look at me. The day before, besides buying a suit, I had also purchased several new casual outfits. Combined with my appearance, I no longer looked like an ordinary student. In her eyes, I practically screamed rich air. Her gaze immediately changed. Thinking her charms would work, she deliberately tugged her collar lower and flashed me a few flirtatious glances. Unfortunately for her, I remained completely indifferent. Her smile gradually disappeared. Being ignored like that was an insult she clearly wasn't used to. Soon she leaned into the gold chain man's chest and purred, "Brother Yong, I'm thirsty. Can you buy me some juice?" The man was clearly wrapped around her finger. "Of course. I'll have someone get it." She shook her head. "No, it tastes better when you buy it yourself." The man instantly surrendered. "All right, wait here." Before leaving, he planted a loud kiss on her cheek. Watching the whole thing unfold, I couldn't help feeling disgusted. There was no way that woman actually loved him. The moment he disappeared from sight, she sauntered over to me. "Excuse me," she said sweetly. "The strap on my dress came loose. Could you help me?" She deliberately turned around and exposed her back. I didn't even look. My eyes remained fixed on the salesperson searching for my phone. "No time." She froze. Then she smiled again and leaned against the counter. "What, are you scared of that guy?" Combining temptation with provocation was usually enough to make men fold. But I simply called out toward the salesperson. "Did you find it yet? I still need to go home and cook for my wife." The woman blinked. "Oh, you're married?" Surprisingly, that didn't discourage her. Instead, she moved even closer. "You've heard the saying, haven't you? Home flowers can never compare to wildflowers." At that point, she wasn't even being subtle anymore. Pulling out a business card, she placed it in my hand. "Here's my number. If you ever want to try something new, call me." I glanced at the card once, then casually tossed it straight into a nearby trash can. I never even looked at her. After being ignored again and again, her face darkened. "Are you deaf? I'm talking to you." I finally looked at her and said, "Sorry, I just don't want to talk to you." Her expression instantly turned vicious. Leaning close to my ear, she whispered, "Have you ever heard the saying that offending a woman is worse than offending a villain?" Before I could understand what she meant, she suddenly burst into tears. At that exact moment, the gold chain man returned carrying drinks. Seeing her crying, he immediately panicked. "Baby, what happened? I was only gone for a minute. Who bullied you?" Through her tears, she repeatedly glanced in my direction. Following her gaze, the man immediately grabbed my collar. "Did you do something to her?" I calmly replied, "Your woman started crying on her own. It has nothing to do with me. If you don't believe me, ask the salesperson." The salesperson knew exactly what had happened. Unfortunately, the moment she opened her mouth, the woman shot her a vicious glare. After a moment of hesitation, the salesperson said, "Well, this gentleman was helping Miss Wu with something about her clothes earlier. Then, I don't know what he said, but she started crying." I stared at her in disbelief. She was lying through her teeth. Instantly, the man exploded. "You touched my woman? I think you're tired of living." Before I could respond, the woman added through fake sobs, "Forget it, Brother Yong. I already told him I'm your woman, but he said you were nothing. He even said he'd beat you until you were looking for your teeth." At that moment, I finally understood what people meant when they said a woman's heart could be the most poisonous thing in the world. "You really have a death wish," the man roared as he raised his fist. I honestly thought I was about to get punched, but just before his fist landed, the grip on my collar suddenly disappeared. The next thing I saw was the giant man crashing to the floor. Looking up, I spotted a broad-shouldered man standing nearby, calmly withdrawing his fist. The gold chain man struggled to his feet and shouted, "Who the hell dares hit me?" But the moment he saw the newcomer, his face turned pale. "Brother Jung, why are you here?" The arrogant thug instantly became humble. I was surprised too. Was this man helping me? But I didn't even know him. The thug quickly offered him a cigarette. "Brother Jung, did I accidentally disturb you while handling business?" Before he could finish, the man kicked him directly in the face. "You blind idiot! Do you know who you're touching?" Then he turned toward me and bowed respectfully. "Mr. Zhao, are you all right?" Hearing that, the thug's face turned white. Only then did I recognize the man. He was one of Song Yucheng's people from the banquet. "I remember you," I said. "What are you doing here?" He smiled respectfully. "Just shopping, but I never expected to see these idiots causing trouble for you." I shrugged. "It's fine. I didn't get hit anyway." The man nodded and glanced toward the thug. "Mr. Zhao, how would you like me to deal with him?" The thug immediately dropped to his knees. "Brother Jung, please forgive me." The woman beside him clearly didn't know who Jung Ge was, but judging from the thug's reaction, she finally realized something was terribly wrong. Even so, she still refused to give up. "Brother Yang, why are you kneeling? I was only defending myself. He harassed me." Jung Ge finally looked at her. The thug hurriedly explained, "Brother Jung, I didn't know Mr. Zhao was your friend. I just didn't want my girlfriend to be wronged." Hearing his woman say this, Chen Daiyong thought for a moment and then gritted his teeth and said, "Mr. Zhao, what kind of person would you think of him?" The moment Chen Daiyong heard the truth, his face twisted with rage. He shot to his feet and slapped Wu Xiaona hard across the face. "What the hell is really going on?" he roared. Wu Xiaona was completely stunned by the sudden blow. Covering her cheek, she screamed, "What are you doing? I'm the one who got bullied. If you can't stand up for me, fine, but why are you hitting me?" She thought things would turn out the same way they always did, that Chen Daiyong would eventually take her side. But this time was different. Not only did he show no sympathy, but he raised his hand and slapped her again. "I told you to tell the truth. Didn't you hear me? His face had turned frighteningly dark. After 2 consecutive slaps, half of Wu Xiaona's face immediately swelled up. Only then did she realize that her usual tricks were completely useless. Seeing that she still refused to speak, Chen Dayong turned toward the salesperson. You tell me what happened, and tell the truth. Otherwise, you know exactly what kind of consequences you'll face. His furious roar made the salesperson tremble all over. Finally, she stuttered through the entire story and explained everything that had happened. The more Chen Dayong listened, the uglier his expression became. By the end, he was absolutely furious. You shameless woman! I've been taking care of you all this time and you're out here flirting with other men behind my back? But what angered him even more was the fact that because of this woman, he had almost caused a disaster for himself. Wu Xiaona immediately panicked. Brother Yang, I was wrong. Please forgive me. I'll never do it again. Gone was the arrogant attitude she had earlier. Unfortunately for her, Chen Dayong had no intention of letting her off. He pulled out his phone and made a call. A few moments later, 2 burly men stormed into the mall and dragged her away by force. Throughout the entire scene, I remained silent. Standing beside me, Hu Zhen leaned closer and quietly whispered, "Women like that usually only have 2 endings. Either they die unexpectedly, or they become the lowest kind of woman imaginable." I felt a slight chill run through me after hearing that, but I still didn't say anything. After all, she had brought all of this upon herself. Once the woman was taken away, Hu Zhen turned his attention back to Chen Dayong. His voice suddenly became ice cold. What are you standing there for? Come apologize to Mr. Zhao. That single sentence nearly made Chen Dayong's legs give out beneath him. Trembling, he hurried forward. Mr. Zhao, I was blind. I made a mistake. Please let me off this time. I merely glanced at him before turning toward the salesperson instead. Where's my phone? The salesperson had only just recovered from the shock. She quickly handed it over. Sir, here it is. Please take it. Even Hu Zhen looked surprised when he saw me simply take the phone. I slipped it into my pocket and said, I still have things to do. You can handle the rest. With that, I turned around and quickly walked out of the mall. Chen Dayong stood frozen. Was I really letting him go just like that? Hu Zhen immediately saw through his thoughts. Looking at him coldly, he said, Mr. Zhao spared you, but don't misunderstand why. He isn't afraid of you, and he certainly isn't doing me any favors. He simply likes to keep a low profile. Hu Zhen's voice wasn't loud, but every word hit Chen Dayong like a hammer. If Mr. Zhao had said even one more sentence, I would have killed you without hesitation. Compared to someone like him, you're not even worth a fart. Cold sweat instantly drenched Chen Dayong's back. At that moment, he finally understood just how terrifying the person he had offended really was. Then Hu Zhen continued, Although Mr. Zhao chose to let you go, he also told me to handle things myself. The problem is, I can't guess what someone like him is thinking. A cold smile appeared on Hu Zhen's face, so all I can do is follow the rules. Hu Zhen knew very well that I simply didn't want to create a bigger scene, but that didn't necessarily mean Chen Dayong was completely out of danger. As for me, I had already left the mall with my new phone in hand. There were more important things on my mind. Now that I finally had a phone capable of running multiple accounts, I could begin the plan I had thought about all night. If Lianqi refused to believe Zhao Yang, then perhaps it was time for her to get to know the mysterious young owner of the investment company instead. Little did I know that what happened next would change everything between us.